Receiving a royal welcome as they begin their state visit to the United Kingdom.
Yes, the couple will also attend a state banquet hosted by King Charles at Buckingham Palace this evening.
But the Princess Royal will not be in attendance as she remains in hospital following a head injury thought to have been caused by a horse 2 days ago.
Well, we can go live to the event and see what's happening. As we can see, a military-style band there at Horse Guards Parade.
Indeed, this is going to be a full-scale state visit from Emperor Akihito and Empress Masako. The scale of this is going to be one of the largest events that the King has been hosting for any foreign dignitary, and perhaps certainly the largest event that the King has been involved in since his diagnosis of cancer.
Absolutely, and what a beautiful day for it. According to reports, the Emperor and Empress are going to make somewhat of a sightseeing tour of this state visit. They'll be going to the Buckingham Palace for a banquet. They'll be laying flowers in St George's Chapel for the late Queen. They'll be visiting the Thames Barrier. Now, they have a huge connection with the royal family here in the United Kingdom. Indeed, they both studied at Oxford University.
Yes.
Which is very interesting. So a very tight connection with this country and our royal family.
But what we're looking at now is that the Guard of Honour is preparing to give a royal salute, and we will hear the national anthem any moment now. The Emperor and Empress of Japan have been under a sovereign's escort under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Woodward. The Blues and Royals with the Band of the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment. That's formed on Horse Guards parades just to the rear of the Guard and Honour as the Empress and Emperor are making their way to this site that we're looking at now.
Yes, of course, and this is, as you said, the first state visit since the King was diagnosed with cancer, and he will welcome them to the country in this state visit. Lots and lots of pomp and pageantry awaits on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon.
And this is something that we, as the British, do very well. Of course, it's one of those things that perhaps is best for our international connections and those... Oh, let's listen in. Arriving there at the pavilion, greeted by the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, there on Horse Guards Parade. He, of course, was introduced with a rendition of the national anthem being played by the Guard of Honour on Horse Guards
And is
Parade.
that also James Cleverly there too? Is he accompanied by other ministers there to greet?
Yes, Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, also there. So you have the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, and James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, as is tradition, standing there on the pavilion. The King has now arrived. We are due to expect the Empress and Emperor any moment now. That's the order of events here on Horse Guards Parade. Now, of course, joining us is Charles Ray, the former royal correspondent at The Sun. And Charles, this is a big moment of pomp and pageantry.
Well, it is, Tom, and good morning to both of you. It is because this is the first state visit that Charles as king has received in this country. So it is quite significant. And also the fact that the Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako are close friends of the royal family. Naruhito spent a lot of time in Britain, as did the Empress at Oxford. But more importantly, the Emperor spent an awful lot of time with the royal family. He went fly fishing with the then Prince of Wales, and he recounts that they never caught a thing when they went fly fishing. He's been driven around Balmoral by Prince Philip, and he's had a barbecue with the late Queen. So his pedigree with the royal family, who he treats as a second family, is second to none.
Naruhito became the Emperor of Japan in 2019, not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. To some extent, he's a relatively new head of state in the same way that our king is.
Yes, absolutely. They're both, if you like, novice heads of state at the moment, but of course they've both got a huge amount of experience in the background. I mean, they've been learning their trade for many, many years. That the only people that can teach them, and that is the previous, monarchs and emperors. So, you're absolutely right. They are both new to this job, but in realistic terms, they're very well versed in what to do and what to do. And the great thing about the Japanese couple is they're very young, and so we would expect them to be around for many, many more years.
And Charles, I understand that the political elements of this state visit have been somewhat stripped back.
Yes, because of our election. I don't think there's going to be a visit to Downing Street as was originally planned because of the election call. They don't want to be seen to be doing anything that may look like they're favouring one particular party against another. But there are plenty of things for the couple to do, and they have done. The thing I found interesting is that the Emperor apparently has got a fixation with the Thames Barrier, and he and the Empress have been down to visit it. I don't know why he's got a fixation with the Thames Barrier, but he has, and
who wouldn't, Charles? It's a marvel of modern engineering. It keeps us all safe, and perhaps the Japanese want to learn from it, because of course there has been some flooding, and actually there was that tsunami not so long ago. Perhaps he would like to replicate that British engineering success.
It may well be, Tom, but he's had a fixation with the Thames Barrier ever since his Oxford days.
Yes, apparently it was something he researched, the history and functioning of the River Thames when he studied at Merton College as a young man. He spent 2 years and 4 months in Oxford studying. How very interesting.
Oh, he sounds like a man after my own heart.
Yes, he does.
No, really, really interesting stuff. We are expecting him to arrive in 3 minutes' time. Of course, the King and Queen arrived at Horse Guards 10 minutes before the Emperor and Empress, as is traditional. They'll be coming down Whitehall and through the grand entrance of Horse Guards, as we can see on our screens now. Charles, this is a big moment for both of these countries, which have become increasingly close in terms of diplomatic, trade, and even military terms.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We've got a very, very close relationship with Japan over recent years. There's been 2 or 3 state visits from here to Japan, and we've had them returned as well from Japan, and this is the latest one to happen. I think both the couple were at the funeral of the late Queen as well. But as I said, they are very close to this royal family in any case. They're very, very friendly, personally friendly, not just diplomatically friendly. But it is a great thing that we have got good, close relationships with a country like Japan. Remember it was, 80 odd years ago we were at war with the country, as we were with Germany, but all those sort of things are way out of the scene now, and it's just friendliness now and diplomacy.
And Charles, we should reflect on Princess Anne will not be attending, of course, after this injury that we suspect was horse-related. What sort of role would she have played?
Well, she would have been there in her role as the Princess Royal and as a senior royal, so she would have been expected to help to greet. She would have been in that greeting line as well that we saw earlier on. and she would have been there to just help smooth things over. She's a very good diplomat, is Princess Anne, and it's a great shame that she's not there. And she's had to cancel this trip that she was going to make later this week to Canada. So it's upset all sorts of plans. And I have to say, the fact that she has numbers of working royals that are left, and I just hope that they wrap the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh in cotton wool and keep them safe and sound for the next few days.
I should say that we are now looking through the beautiful St James's Park at the Mall, where, of course, crowds have been gathering for this state visit. I have to say, I was on the Mall over the weekend and saw it adorned with both British and Japanese flags. So this has been quite some time in preparation over the last few days, making sure everything is perfect for this moment. Charles, this is something that doesn't happen every day of the week. What's the difference between an official state visit and some of these other visits from foreign dignitaries that we've seen in recent years?
Well, in effect, Tom, the pomp and ceremony that you have got today, I mean, as you quite rightly say, we do it best of any country in the world. Look what happened at the weekend of Trooping the Colour with the rain that lashed down. I'm sure you got very, very wet as well. But this is a fantastic, brilliant day, and it's the sort of day that, you know, we love in this country, because we can show off our troops. And we're looking at a picture at the moment of the guards on horseback, and it's really fantastic event for a proper state visit and not just, you know, a diplomatic visit.
Absolutely. And Charles, a state banquet, of course, is in order.
Yeah.
What might feature on the menu? Will there be a fusion between Japanese and British cuisine, or will it be entirely British? What do you suspect?
Well, I'm not terribly sure. I'm sure. Well, what will happen certainly is that both sides of the couples will have had a chat about what should be on the menu, and everything will be agreed and take into account things that are not liked by any of the main participants. So I suspect there will be mainly a British menu, but maybe a little bit of a hint of Japan in tribute to the visitors.
Now, we are expecting the Emperor to arrive any moment now. They've been processing down Whitehall and will turn into Horse Guards Parade to be greeted by not only the King and Queen, but also, of course, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, the Home Secretary as well, showing the all levels of the British state there for this reception. Of course, the United Kingdom and Japan have a long history together, and before the acrimonious period in the Second World War, there were talks of alliances between the British and the Japanese Empire, and in many ways Japan and the United Kingdom, two strong island nations with historical huge roles to play in the world, royal families, parliamentary democracies. We can really see how these two countries are in many ways really quite aligned.
Oh, well, it appears as though we may have lost Charles Ray.
No, sorry, I didn't realise you were talking. I didn't realise you were talking to me. Apologies, sorry, Tom. I do apologise. But you're absolutely.
Sorry, no, do you know what? It's nice just to sometimes let a comment just sit, and then we can move on and talk about something completely different. No, Charles, sorry. The history of these two parliamentary monarchies.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. I mean, they've got lots of history between the pair of them, and it's nice to see that, as we already discussed, that they are very close. There are very close links with Japan, diplomatically and friendly, and everything else. And you know, we are a country that does need a lot of friends at the moment. That's for sure.
And I understand, Charles, they'll be visiting quite a few locations, a bit of a sightseeing tour as well as a state visit, visiting Westminster Abbey, Kew Gardens. Where else might they go?
Well, they're going back to Oxford to visit their old colleges as well at some stage. I'm not sure whether they've done that already, because they arrived on Saturday, so they've done quite a few bits and bobs already, like the Thames Barrier. So the visit to the college has either happened or is about to happen after this day. And as you quite rightly said, there's a visit to Windsor Castle. They want to lay flowers at the grave of the late Queen. So you know that it's a full packed visit for the King, who I have to say, when he arrived, he looked quite splendid and walking quite gingerly, but you know, he looked quite well.
Because there was some speculation in terms of whether the King would play a large role, how much of this visit the King could actually have the energy to do. Of course, still undergoing cancer treatment, but he is really putting on a show for this royal for this state visit.
He is, Tom. He is, Tom. And the thing is, he would have been kicking and screaming if they'd said, no, you can't go. This visit for him is extremely important, and I'm not suggesting other visits and other things aren't important, but this one is particularly important given his personal relationship with the Emperor. So he will have made absolutely sure that he's on top of his game for this one. And of course, let's not forget that the Australia tour that's coming up has been amended to, you know, to make it a lot easier for the King with a 2-day break. They've cut out New Zealand and Fiji, and later in the year he will be going to Samoa. Something else in the royal diary that's very, very important for the monarch, the government heads of state meeting. So he'll want to make sure he's fit and ready for those two. But everything will be done in consultation with his doctors.
And Charles, in your mind, what do we gain from these state visits as a country?
Well, as a country, in the background, I mean, we are seeing the pomp and circumstance and everything else at the moment, but in the background, there'll be advisors from both sides having a chat, having to, you know, talking about exports and imports to and from the countries. Other links as well will be talked about, and we don't hear about those until we actually see, you know, what has been discussed and what's been agreed.
It is fascinating to see the diplomatic ties that can be fostered by the royal families of both countries. The United Kingdom is acceding to what's known as the CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, a huge Asia-Pacific trade area that, of course, includes countries like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, lots of these countries that we're perhaps building a larger trading relationship with our new role in the world. The Asia-Pacific specifically has been a big area of interest for our foreign and trade policy.
Well, I think countries like Japan have become much more important since we, you know, divorced ourselves away from Europe. So we've had to look at other areas more intensely, like Japan, for trade both ways. You know, it's important that we carry on those relationships. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't be having relationships with Europe. We are, but you know, we're looking now further afield, you know, for trade possibilities.
And we're expecting, Charles, a royal salute to 41 guns in Green Park by the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. Now, that's under the command of Major John Bailiff Royal Horse Artillery. I suspect we will have that very soon indeed.
Yes, we will, as we did for Trooping the Colour. They went off and did their 41-gun salute. It's a traditional way of greeting, you know, a visitor or, you know, an event like this. And as I say, it's all part and parcel of what we do and how we do it. And it's going to be, you know, great to hear in a few minutes.
I've always thought that 41 is a very peculiar number to be the traditional number of gun salutes for an occasion like this. Of course, it has been for a very long time, that traditional number of guns.
Yes, it has. And don't ask me why it's 41 and not 1442. I can't answer that question. It's one of those figures that you learn about when you're starting to cover royals. There is a 41-gun salute, but I don't think I ever bothered to ask, well, why is it 41?
Now, I must say that we are looking at the vehicles of the Emperor and Empress now rolling on to Horse Guards Parade, only 8 or so minutes after we expected them to, but who's counting? And they will be driving up past the Guard of Honour to greet His Majesty the King and the Queen, who wait there on the pavilion that has been erected on Horse Guards Parade. So quite a convoy of cars for the Japanese Emperor just arriving now.
Yes, there must be near a dozen cars going into the Horse Guards Parade there. Let's have a look at who's coming out of this car there. Ah, this must be the Emperor and Empress of Japan arriving there. They'll be greeting His Majesty and Queen Camilla, I'm sure. There we go, a nice handshake. Old friends.
Old friends, old allies, and an important bond between two sovereign island nations represented in these two ancient monarchies. And that's something that's quite rare to see in the world today. These ties between the United Kingdom and Japan, I think, are perhaps becoming more and more poignant and more important. But behind the king and the queen are the politicians, the people who've been setting perhaps this train of greater integration between the United Kingdom and Japan. Rishi Sunak, David Cameron, James Cleverly, surrounded by senior military figures. Charles Ray, the former royal correspondent at The Sun, is still with us. And Charles, this is what we expect of a state occasion.
Yes, we do. And I don't know if you noticed that Prince William,
Yes.
who had met the Emperor and Empress earlier on to escort them down Whitehall to this point, so he's very much involved. And I suspect that this evening we will see an appearance of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh as well at the banquet. So it will be a full turnout for those available royals who are not on sick leave at the moment.
And of course we can't forget, 3 royals who, perhaps not all on sick leave, but certainly who have reduced capacity at this moment in time, although the King making a marvellous effort to turn out to be there for this occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, this is one event he was determined that he wasn't going to miss or, cut back on. It was very important to him personally, never mind for the country as it's a state visit, but personally for him, it's very, very important.
Now, I must say, at this royal pavilion, Their Majesties, the Emperor and Empress, are being greeted and received by Sir Kenneth Alicia, His Majesty's Lieutenant of Greater London, the Silver Stick in Waiting, Lieutenant Colonel Roland Spiller, and the Field Officer in Brigade Waiting, Colonel Guy Stone, is also present there. And this is the Royal Pavilion greeting on Horse Guards Parade.
Fantastic stuff. And Charles, I must say that a couple of people have got in touch about the gun salute. So Karen says the number of gun salutes varies depending on the location, with more salutes added to the standard 21 depending on where the saluting is taking place. So if the salute is fired from a royal park or a royal fortress, then 20 rounds are added, making it the 41 gun salute. She says
Oh, well,
this was
that's put me in my place then.
well, there we go. That's the reasoning there. So this was ordered by the Board of Ordnance in 1827.
So whenever we hear any of these 41 gun salutes from Green Park, they're always 41 guns because it's a royal park. The same would be true of Hyde Park, I suppose. But elsewhere in the country, it might be the more mundane, run-of-the-mill 21 guns. Now, there's quite some conversation, quite some back and forth going on between the Emperor, Empress and the politicians, but also those senior military figures and royal figures, all in the Royal Pavilion here, as we await the gun salute. Charles, what do you suppose they might be talking about?
Well, I think it will be certainly, there won't be anything controversial, that's for sure. It will be a small chit-chat. He may well have met some of those military people before, and it will just be hello.
And the gun salute has begun. Let's just listen in. listening to the Guard of Honor giving a royal salute and the Japanese national anthem being played. The Emperor, accompanied by the King there, has been inspecting the Guard of Honor, the Queen and the Empress remaining there at the Royal Pavilion. But throughout this afternoon, the King has been presenting many people to the Emperor, and the Queen indeed presenting to the Empress as well, those individuals up there on the pavilion. Sir Kenneth Olisa, His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of Greater London, the Right Honourable Rishi Sunak, of course, the Prime Minister, Lord Cameron, the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, and James Cleverly, the Home Secretary as well. They're accompanied by many other people also here on the pavilion.
And we have a carriage approaching, a number of carriages, 2 carriages there to presumably pick up the Emperor and Empress as well as His Majesty. We also have in attendance Alderman Professor Michael Manelli, the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of the City of London. We have the Alderwoman and Sheriff Dame Susan Langley, the Sheriff of London. We have another Sheriff of London. We have the Chief of the Defence Staff, Admiral Sir Anthony Radakin, Admiral Sir Benjamin K2, the First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff. We also have General Sir Roland Walker. And we're just seeing on the screen there Prince William walking down the steps there at the pavilion.
Yes, of course, the Guard of Honor has been giving this royal salute, and now there is a procession in these royal carriages. Charles Ray still with us. Interesting to note those senior figures from the armed forces and from politics there mixing with the Emperor and Empress.
Yes, it's what I would expect for any state visit like this, that those senior politicians of whatever colour would be there, as well as senior members of the military. And we've got the 2 carriages, excuse me, we've got the 2 carriages which are about to set off. We have the King and the Emperor in the first carriage, and I see the back of the head of Prince William in the second carriage. So there's going to be a carriage procession back down Whitehall, heading towards Buckingham Palace, where everybody will be enjoying a lunch. There will be a lunch that's on top of the banquet tonight, so I'm hoping it's going to be a light lunch, because those banquets tend to be, quite a large affair of food.
Yes, I can imagine. And I can't help but notice, I don't know what you think, but Prince William there, quite a solitary figure. Of course, the Princess of Wales is still recovering from her treatment. Of course, Prince Harry is nowhere to be found. He does look quite solitary there. He has a lot on his shoulders.
Well, he does have a lot on his shoulders. I mean, I think as anybody would if they have got a very close relative like Catherine battling away at cancer, he's got to carry on doing his royal duties as well. And I'm not suggesting that other people don't work when they've got cancer. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But he's got to carry on. I mean, it was nice to see him the other night taking some time out with George and Charlotte at the Taylor Swift concert, where he was, where Twitter's gone on a meltdown because of his dad dancing. I didn't think he did that bad, actually, to be perfectly honest. I'd be quite happy to do sort of moves.
I have to say, Charles, the carriage procession has begun. The King and the Emperor are in the 1902 State Landau. This is the carriage that most often takes those visiting on if they're a head of state. But the Queen and the Empress of Japan are in a carriage behind the semi-state Landau, and another one behind that with the Prince of Wales and His Excellency Mr. Hirofumi Nakasone, who's the head of the official suite, and behind them ambassadors, chamberlains, grand stewards, and again 4 more carriages behind them with other individuals, the chief lady in waiting to the Empress, the private secretary to the Queen, all these individuals accompanied by their equivalent in the respective country.
I mean, it's quite a procession that's going to head down, Whitehall, and we saw this sort of procession last, Tripping the Colour, and that was in the rain, as we said. But this one's going to be quite nice, and hopefully there'll be quite a few cheers for the royal party as they ride down in the carriages.
And Charles, just to return to the frivolous story of Taylor Swift and that epic selfie that was taken of herself, by herself, and with Prince William. And it was George and Charlotte, wasn't it, with him as well at the concert. Taylor Swift was accused of picking sides, taking sides, taking the side of Prince William over Prince Harry. We are, of course, looking at them now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it may well be she's been accused of that, but let's not forget that they are quite friendly, Taylor Swift and Prince William. Let's not forget that a year or so ago, I think it was, where she enticed him up to join her and John Bon Jovi in a quick sing-along of Living on a Prayer. So it's not as if they've just suddenly met. They are quite friendly. And it was it's a really happy picture, that was. The smiles on the children's faces. And Prince William and Taylor Swift. It was just a fantastic picture, and appeared huge over a spread in most of the national papers on the day after. It was a great picture, great picture.
So rare to see two individuals genuinely in awe to be in each other's company.
Yes.
Taylor Swift there thinking, my goodness, I'm with the future King of England. And of course, the future King of England there being, my goodness, I'm with Taylor Swift.
Yeah, just goes to show the power of popularity, really.
Queen of pop, princess of pop.
Princess of pop, perhaps, but we are looking at the Mall, where these grand flags have been lining the Mall there for some days now. Here is Lord Cameron back in the pavilion on horse guards. Rishi Sunak, James Cleverly and Lord Cameron have all remained there on the pavilion. Their role very much reduced in this state visit. Perhaps they would have originally been going on more of these sort of grand occasions, riding in carriages, but of course the election means that the meeting in Downing Street, that's off. Much of the role for these politicians now involved in an active election campaign, much reduced from what the original plans were, Charles.
Oh, there's the political trio.
Yeah, they're now on their way back now, and presumably they're going to get back into the job of campaigning for their party. And as you quite rightly said, anything to do with politics and the visit is now off the agenda, because it would be seen as favouring one side above the other.
Charles, there's something quite moving about these events, these state visits. There's some people in our inbox questioning, why we have these types of things and the importance of them. But I think they do provide an element of unity, an element of being proud of our country and what it means to be British.
Well, I think, as we've said before, this is what we're seeing and what we're hearing about now at the state visit and looking at the Guard of Honour and everything else. But behind the scenes, there is a lot of work going on by representatives of both sides to improve our relationship with each other, and including trade and export and import of goods that we badly need and they badly need. So, there's a big behind-the-scenes event going on, to try and get as much out of this for both countries. That's why we have these state visits.
Yes, and what a marvellous, resplendent scene it is there on the Mall, with the Guard of Honour galloping down, really. And I think that is a bit of well, perhaps it's a canter. But the route of this procession, of course, is down the Mall, through the Queen's Gardens on the south side, and then onto the forecourt of Buckingham Palace, through that centre gate that I think we all know so well. This is the route we can expect, and my goodness, it does look really rather splendid.
I mean, it's always fantastic to watch these guys riding down in London. It really is fantastic, and it's just one of the things that we do so well. Just brilliant.
Yes, truly beautiful to see the flags lining the Mall there.
Yeah.
I always feel a little bit sorry for Rishi Sunak, James Cleverly and Lord Cameron. They sort of had to slink off back to Downing Street, although it is, of course, directly adjacent to Horse Guards Parade. Not a long walk for them to return to Downing Street. But they did look rather grand in tails.
We've seen them walking across the Horse Guards Parade, have we not, as a trio?
Yes, they're walking to Downing Street.
Very recently as well.
Oh, yes, that was for the South Korean visit.
Yes, the South Korean visit.
And there is the 1902 state landau, that premier carriage, and behind it the semi-state landau with the Queen and the Empress of Japan within it. Again, all of the individuals matched with their counterpart from the corresponding country. Behind that, another semi-state landau with the Prince of Wales and His Excellency Mr. Hirofumu Nagasone, the head of the official suite of Japan. And there is a further semi-state landau behind there as well, with the Grand Master of Ceremonies of the Imperial Household of Japan, the Ambassador and Press Secretary to the Emperor of Japan, and Special Assistant of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as Viscount Brookborough, KG Lord in Waiting. So, my goodness, quite an array of carriages, many carriages. I'm going to count, actually.
There's a huge number of people involved.
Eight carriages, by my count, coming down the Mall. Charles, of course, standard, and I think it is very odd when we sort of say, oh, how very standard, 8 carriages down the Mall. But, I mean, there's nothing really particularly standard about this at all. Yes, it's happened before. Yes, whenever there's a state visit, we sort of see this and we talk of it as if it's a bit run-of-the-mill. But, my goodness, this is not run-of-the-mill. This is splendid.
It is splendid, but I think you'll find, Tom, that most of these state visits are quite splendid when they're held in like this in the sunshine. And we're now looking at the King's troop getting ready or arriving with their guns. I'm not sure whether we've had the 41 gun salute yet already, or whether they're going to be on their way to Green Park. But I think they're facing the wrong way at the moment. But so the carriages have arrived back at the palace, and as I say, they'll be heading off to lunch in a very few minutes.
Yes, and this lunch will, of course, be to some extent a diplomatic affair, but also to what extent will there be diplomacy here beyond niceties? There are huge restrictions on what both royal families can do in terms of talking actual policy. This is about building friendships rather than thrashing out new trade terms or whatever else might be going on.
You're absolutely right, Tom. It is about building on the friendship that already exists between these two countries. And as I said, the hard graft, the hard work of what goes on between the two countries in terms of various export, trade, any other matters that need to be discussed, they'll be held privately and away. And at the end of the visit, both countries will then know what they've got and what they're going to give each other, and the diplomacy carries on. But at the lunch themselves, these guys won't be discussing policies at all. They'll just be friendly chit-chat, and nothing more than that.
They can talk about the Thames Barrier, can't they, Charles? But I don't know if I'm sure you saw this too. They did seem very comfortable in each other's company, taking that stroll around Horse Guards Parade.
I mean, both men had huge smiles on their faces. I mean, as I said to you earlier on, this is a friendship that goes back many years from the Emperor's time at Oxford and many visits here. I mean, he's been carriage driving with Prince Philip. He's been invited to a barbecue with the late Queen, and he went fly fishing with the then Prince of Wales. So this is not just something that they've never met before. This is two friends meeting again after some time, and I'm sure the Emperor will be expressing his good wishes for the Princess Royal as well.
We should say the carriage procession
and Catherine
has now arrived at the grand entrance of Buckingham Palace. We're expecting the Guard of Honour to receive their Majesties and His Royal Highness with a royal salute, and we're expecting as well the band to play both the British national anthem and the Japanese national anthem now inside the gates of Buckingham Palace. The guards there, having received orders, moving on, holding those gates open, and it's relatively rare that we see these grand gates of Buckingham Palace completely open. Of course, many guards around, people won't be wandering in, but these gates have been open to receive those 8 carriages all of those dignitaries and to prepare for those national anthems to be played. This is kicking off the, I suppose, most senior level of this state visit. Of course, we've discussed the previous elements of this state visit, a visit to Oxford, a visit even to the Thames Barrier. But now the real highlight, I suppose, of the entire moment, these two heads of grand royal families of two proud independent island nations together inside Buckingham Palace, preparing for a grand lunch. Now, Charles, we're seeing what looks like a moving on of many of those horses that were involved, a moving on of some of those guards.
That's the King's Troop.
And do go on.
Sorry, no, that is the King's Troop, and they've got the gun carriages, and they're the ones who carry out the 41 gun salute, as we saw. Tripping the colour, and they'll be doing the same today if they haven't already done so. I can't remember. Haven't heard if the guns had gone off at all yet.
And we couldn't quite hear those guns when they went off. I think I heard a few of the shots, but it was during those national anthems. So we heard those guns go off, and now they're being brought back to, I suppose, the other side of St James's Park, where many guards reside.
And Charles, do we? Oh, sorry. Go on, Charles.
Sorry. No, I'm just going to say that these guys are going back to their barracks now, and the horses prepared, and get back into their working uniforms rather than their state uniforms.
OK, well, Charles, thank you very much indeed for talking us through all of this fantastic event. The royals have officially welcomed the Japanese Emperor and Empress. There we are, looking at a final shot of Buckingham Palace outside after that carriage parade entered. Thank you very much indeed. Charles Ray, former royal correspondent at The Sun.
And goodness me, what a marvellous picture to end this first part of that grand element of this state visit. Buckingham Palace looking grand in what is going to be a really rather sunny day. Stay with us here on GB News. We're going to be bringing you much more besides this royal occasion. Not least, what's this weather going to do to the Channel crossings? How are we going to see these small boats down in the Channel? That next.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
All sides.
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
History lecturers at the University of Liverpool have been advised to problematise whiteness and heterosexuality in their seminars. They are saying that you should be guilty if you're white and heterosexual. Not using the long words they use, but that's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, but do you know what? History in this country is concerned with more and has been lived by more white people and more heterosexuals, right? And that's the history. I'll tell you something else, Dawn. This is Russell Group University material here. This is Liverpool. It's a really good university. Mm-hmm. The thing that really got me going apart from this, and I thought it was an AI generation of words input into a system to come up with from something. It's ridiculous. The main issue I have is the verb problematise. I've never heard of that before. Yeah. So they should be prioritising grammar. Let's get first principles back in there firstly.
It's just promoting anti-racism.
It's not, Amy.
It is. Wait. It's just bringing the marginalised voices into the discussion. So
no, what they're saying is look at British history through the optic of
all perspectives. So let's look at it from the perspective of a queer person growing up. Let's look at it from the perspective of somebody from...
But that's not the majority.
When I actually looked at the evidence, it's all about unpacking bias, and you have to admit there has been a white bias in history.
No, there hasn't, because the facts...
From a white perspective...
Amy, the facts are, in history, most people in this country are white and heterosexual.
Of course, but then there's still...
So that's the history.
...voices that deserve to be brought into the discussion as much as the dominant...
Look,
like, that's all decolonising the curriculum is hearing all sides of the argument.
I think...
Which surely we at GB News love. We celebrate that. That's what we do.
We do, but we're not telling anybody it's bad to be white or it's bad to be...
Exactly.
That is not what...
Amy, it is. It is.
The People's Channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
United Kingdom, it certainly looked like from the state visit there, sun shining over Westminster and central London. Yes, but
and why is it my turn to say the downcast, sad, sort of pettifogging rules? Well, yellow heat... Pettifogging, particular.
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yellow heat health alerts are in place for most of England this week, with temperatures set to hit a balmy 30 degrees Celsius.
Yes, get your linen out. So after a frankly disappointing, cold and wet start to June, windy too, is it time for Brits to enjoy the sun? Or is it a bit too hot and should we take cautions?
Well, let's go to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who's in sunny Burton-on-Trent. And Will, how's the weather where you are?
Good afternoon. Yes, it wasn't quite the start to summer that many Brits would be expecting, but lots of people here in Burton-on-Trent are enjoying the start of this summer sun. It has disappeared just for a few moments behind a bit of patchy cloud, but I can assure you temperatures are expected to reach around 28 degrees here for this part of Staffordshire. The highest temperatures across the UK today are expected to reach about 30 degrees, with most of the warm weather consistently in the south for today. There is a yellow weather warning in pretty much every part of the UK. These are heat health alerts, and they come into place when the UK Health Security Agency and the Met Office sees that we are going to have a consistent period of hot weather that could be troubling for some people in England, particularly vulnerable people, people that have multiple health conditions, take lots of medication, people in social care settings. So the advice really is to make sure that those people are cared for, with putting out a warning so that they are making sure that people have enough fluids that are inside in shady conditions, and that people, if they are going outside, are wearing lots of sun cream. This is in place until Thursday. It is only the lowest run of the traffic light system, yellow out of yellow, amber and red, but we know that if it does get a lot hotter to amber levels or to red, that's when serious problems can start, with much greater effects to things like the NHS. But for right now, lovely, beautiful weather with a little bit of a warning as well.
Goodness me, Will, I do believe you that it was very, very sunny just until we came to you. It is the way...
He's got his jacket off.
It's the way these things go, isn't it? You know, blistering sunshine, and the moment that we cut to Will, of course, the cloud comes over the...
Oh, well, thank you very much, Will. Really appreciate your time. We'll come back to you in Burton-on-Trent. Good stuff.
When it will be more sunny.
Do you know what? This is quite patronising to older people, don't you think? I mean, they've lived through, you know, high temperatures.
Oh,
this
they
is
lived
not that
through
high.
Was it 1976? Is it 76?
I mean, when it gets to about 40 degrees, that is worrying territory. We're not used to that in this country, and we don't have the facilities to cater for it a lot of the time.
Was it 74 or 76?
28 degrees and slightly overcast.
It was that glorious summer, perhaps the longest, warmest summer in the history that people can remember. I'm sure people will write in the comments when precisely it was. And what were you up to on that long, glorious summer in the 1970s?
Yes, everyone talks of it, don't they?
Yeah.
Anyway, have you ever wondered what's on the dark side of the moon? Tom has.
Well, it's always been a mystery, but China are about to get a step closer to finding out. Their Change 6 lunar probe has returned the first ever samples from the far side of the moon.
OK, well, joining us now is space expert Andy Lound. Andy, what does this all mean?
Hi, yeah, I mean, this is great. It'll be the first time we're going to have samples back from the far side of the moon. And it could really open up really the evolution of the moon itself. There's also an extra bonus with this one here, because the area where they've taken the samples from is an extremely ancient area of a huge basin. Basin, if you like, is a huge impact crater, but it's a basin, so it's not quite the same shape, but it's much older and larger. And at the time this basin was formed, the moon was a lot closer to the Earth, and there was a large bombardment going on at the time in the solar system. So there could be rock samples from the ancient Earth, which actually has ended up on the surface of the moon. And the sampling that could be done could actually bring back some of the samples. So what you'd be looking at is some of the oldest rocks from the Earth collected from the moon. So that's actually quite an important excitement regarding the sampling from the far side of the moon.
And this is particularly special, Andy, because, of course, the moon sort of rotates in a way that means that we only ever see one side of the moon. When the Apollo astronauts went, they went, of course, to the light side of the moon, much easier to communicate with the side that faces us. Getting round to the other side of the moon, very hard to communicate, very hard to pick stuff up. It's quite a technological feat what has gone on here.
It's an incredible feat because, as you rightly say, the moon has a captured orbit, so it's actually only one side faces us all the time. And therefore, the Chinese have used the relay satellite, which they've got in orbit, to keep in communication with the far side of the moon. But of course, that does require the complicated nature here of launching a sample, because the sample was launched and docked with an orbiting vehicle, which they had placed up there. It's interesting because it's almost a miniaturized version of what they intend to do in 2030 when they attempting to put Chinese astronauts on the surface of the moon. So it was quite a technical feat to actually do this, but of course what they're doing is they're trialing out their technology, if you like, for their manned mission, which they hope to do in 2030, which will be quite fantastic.
And Andy, we have a bit of a complicated relationship with China as a state. Should we be worried at all about all this space exploration?
Well, this mission's quite interesting because it also has experiments on board from Italy, France, Sweden and Pakistan. So they're actually doing an international program here. So they've got other partners taking part in it. I think we shouldn't be worried in many senses, certainly from not a militaristic point of view. I don't think that's going to be an issue there. But of course, the issue of claiming elements of the moon is going to be a big story in the next few years, because obviously mineral resources on the moon, you know, if you can find helium-3, which is used for fusion power systems, or iridium, or any rare earth metals, that is going to be the big challenge. And I think we need to have international agreements now between ourselves. Internationally needs to be done there, but I think we need to see scientific partnerships coming closer together, especially with nations like China, because China are in really a race with the United States at the moment for getting resources from the surface of the moon.
And we're running out of time, Andy, but in a word, who's going to win the race? China want to get there by 2030. The United States want to return, I think it's by 2026, but I don't know if they'll actually be able to do that. Who's going to win this new race to the moon?
It's a new race. America have already been there, of course. They got there, they've already been, and they're going back again. I think the Americans will get their people there before the Chinese in the latest bout. But to be quite honest, it'll be just so many people going there, and then in the next decade, the moon is actually going to get quite busy.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed, Andy Lound.
Thank you.
Can you imagine that, the fight for resources on the moon? You can imagine some kind of war, can't you?
The treaty that was signed in the 50s or 60s is based on the Antarctic Treaty, which means it's in common hold for all mankind. That's not going to hold. As soon as people get there, establish a base there, start extracting things, it's no longer for all mankind. It's any man for themselves.
Right, well, we have a major development in the election to bring you, so stay with us.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War. Restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother, and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 25th of June. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Now, a major development in the election betting scandal today engulfing the Conservatives. The party has now withdrawn support for their candidates accused of placing bets on the election date. But has the damage already been done?
Meanwhile, there's an election clash over immigration. The Conservatives say migrants are queuing up in Calais, just waiting for a Labour government to scrap the Rwanda plan. Labour has hit back, saying migrants aren't waiting, and Rishi Sunak has failed to deal with the problem.
And Julian Assange. He's been released from prison after reaching a deal with the United States. He's now expected to be a free man. But is the WikiLeaks founder a hero, or did he jeopardise national security by revealing military intelligence? Saint or sinner?
And the King and Queen have welcomed the Japanese Emperor and Empress, who are on a 3-day state visit to the UK. Meanwhile, however, Princess Anne has spent a second night in hospital after her injury involving a horse.
Well, are people actually in Calais waiting for a Labour government? That's what the Conservatives are trying to push. They're trying to say more people would be crossing right now if it weren't for the fact that Labour may well scrap, well, they will scrap the Rwanda plan as soon as they take office if they're elected. It's an interesting one because, yes, there was a little bit of a slowdown in terms of boat crossings, but actually today, as we saw this morning on GB News Breakfast, those boats are still coming over.
Yes, we have our eyes on the channel and we'll be bringing you the latest numbers as and when we have them. But it is interesting to see, given that the weather has been so very nice today, yesterday, are these numbers the same level that we would expect, or have we in the last couple of days seen some sort of effect given the expectation of the election outcome? That's certainly what the Conservatives are trying to say, and there are some reports in the papers. One quote that was snippeted and tweeted out by the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, suggesting that people are waiting. That was from a reporter talking to people in Calais. But what's the truth? We're going to try and get to that in this programme, and we want your views. What do you think is really going on there in Calais with those preparing to cross? gbnews.com/your say.
Yes, that's the way to get in touch, but it's your headlines with Sophia.
Emily, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1:02. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. And as you've been hearing, the King and Queen are hosting a ceremonial welcome for the Emperor and Empress of Japan. They began their 3-day state visit at an event in Horse Guards Parade this afternoon, with the royal couple greeting a line of dignitaries, including Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Princess Anne isn't taking part in today's welcome while she recovers in hospital after being injured by a horse. The wife of Julian Assange says he'll seek a full pardon after agreeing to plead guilty to a single felony count of illegally obtaining and disclosing national security material. The 52-year-old founder of WikiLeaks left the UK this morning and is due to appear before a federal judge in the Mariana Islands, a US territory in the Western Pacific. He's expected to be sentenced to 5 years, roughly the equivalent of the time he's already served in Britain before returning to Australia. The Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, told Parliament the case has gone on for too long.
I've been very clear, as both the Labor leader in opposition but also as Prime Minister, that regardless of the views that people have about Mr Assange's activities, the case has dragged on for too long. There's nothing to be gained by his continued incarceration, and we want him brought home to Australia.
Assange's release caps off a long and bitter standoff with the United States that started with his arrest on a Swedish warrant in 2010. He's since become a divisive symbol, celebrated by some as a crusader for truth, but criticised by others who view him as a threat to global security. Through WikiLeaks, Assange has revealed state secrets related to US activities in Iraq and even published stolen emails from the US Democratic Party, which damaged Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. In other news, Labour is pledging to halve knife crime within a decade if it wins the general election. The party's plan includes creating a new cross-government coalition to work on solutions, as well as community hubs involving youth workers and career advisors. Sir Keir Starmer says cracking down on knife crime is a moral mission.
I was the chief prosecutor for 5 years, and therefore I prosecuted many cases involving the use of knives, and I've made it my personal mission to deal with this. It is a moral mission so far as I'm concerned. It isn't a question of urban versus rural. In fact, I think there's more knife crime, sadly, in rural areas, or at least it's going up more quickly. And I think it's not fair on the families we've been hearing from this morning to simply point the finger to somebody else. This is something which a government needs to take responsibility for. I will take responsibility for, on a cross-party basis, to make the change that we need.
Meanwhile, the Conservative Party says it can no longer support two candidates accused of placing bets on when the election would take place. Craig Williams and Laura Saunders are the subject of inquiries by the Gambling Commission. Both will still appear on election ballots because the deadlines for nominations has now passed. A yellow heat health alert is in force across most of the country, with temperatures set to exceed 30 degrees today. Yesterday's high topped 28 degrees in Surrey, making it the hottest day of the year so far. That's almost certain to be surpassed today, with central London expecting some of the hottest conditions. The RNLI is urging people to take care, with crowds expected to cool off in coastal areas. But forecasters are warning the heat won't last long, with showers and possibly thunderstorms predicted later tomorrow. Meteorologist Tamsin Green says Britain isn't prepared for hot weather.
It's going to be hot. It is going to be unseasonably hot. Temperatures are going to be above average for the time of year, 10 to 12 degrees above average for the time of year for some of us. And, you know, obviously our infrastructure isn't built for this kind of heat. We don't have air conditioning. We don't even have ceiling fans. You know, in order to stay cool, you've got to do just simple things like keep the blinds or the shades down in your window so the heat doesn't come in through the window, but also circulate the air through the day as much as you can.
And the first samples ever collected from the dark side of the moon have arrived on Earth. China's lunar probe has returned, making the first country to successfully bring back samples from the moon's far side. The re-entry capsule of the Chang'e probe touched down in the northern Chinese region of Inner Mongolia this morning. The capsule was carrying lunar soil, which was collected earlier in June. It will now be analysed by scientists as China continues its efforts to become a space and science powerhouse. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 1. Now, we start this hour with that major development in the election betting scandal.
Yes, the Conservative Party has now withdrawn its support for two parliamentary candidates, those candidates being investigated by the Gambling Commission.
Let's get more from our political editor, Christopher Hope, joining us live from Westminster. Christopher, a lot of people are frankly bemused as to why this action now taken by the Conservative Party didn't happen a week ago.
Well, you're not the only one there, Tom. And hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. That's right. I was with the Prime Minister yesterday in Edinburgh when he unveiled his Scottish Tory manifesto. He allowed us to ask him 6 questions from the travelling press pack with him afterwards. 5 of them were about the betting scandal. And then he disclosed to me when I asked him that the party is now investigating it for its own sake, this issue, aside from the Gambling Commission, of course. And that's led to today the party has now withdrawn support for 2 candidates at the election, Craig Williams, the Tory candidate for Montgomery and Glendower, and Laura Saunders, the candidate for Bristol North West. That's an attempt, I think, by the party to get ahead of it, because, frankly, until he dealt with it and showed some strong action, he was going to keep being asked about it, as he was yesterday. But as you say correctly, this first broke last Thursday. That is, this allegations about Laura Saunders. Of course, her husband is the director of campaigns, Tony Lee. He's taken a step back. And another colleague there at the weekend, Nick Mason, he's also taken a step back from the campaign. This means, of course, that Tony Lee now can't campaign for his wife because she's no longer a candidate for the Tory party, although her name is on the ballot paper in Bristol North West. There's a wider question, I think, about leadership. Why didn't the Prime Minister see it was an issue last Thursday and act straight away? Why wait so long? Because, of course, people are voting right now with their postal ballots. 1 in 5 people vote by post nowadays, so at any point this can affect the result of the election, but finally it looks like the Prime Minister is getting ahead of it.
Well, Christopher, of course there is this parallel investigation being conducted by the Gambling Commission. Do you suspect that Rishi Sunak thought he could just sort of leave it with the Gambling Commission? They'll work out what went wrong, and I guess the problem is he was just being asked about it so much in the press and the media by journalists that he had to do something.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, we're asking about it because candidates tell us it is cutting through, a bit like that D-Day row when he came back early from Normandy for an ITV News interview. It has cut through, I think, on the doorstep, and he had to get ahead of it. The government's problem is they couldn't put any pressure on the Gambling Commission because that's independent, correctly. They must do their own piece of work. But the clock is ticking. The people vote formally. 8 out of 10 of us will vote a week Thursday. They've got to get ahead of that and take action to try and put this issue to bed, and that's why I think he took that action. But Labour's Pat McFadden, he's a shadow cabinet office minister, he's been making clear this is not enough.
What this whole affair shows is that if the Conservative Party won again on the 4th of July, they would think they could get away with anything. When the election was called, their first instinct wasn't to go out and campaign, it was to fill their boots. And it's taken Rishi Sunak 2 weeks to face up to the inevitable and withdraw support from these candidates. I think it's another instance of one rule for them and another rule for everyone else. Remember, this wasn't just gambling, this was insider trading, betting on a sure thing because you were in possession of information that other people didn't have. And it was the misuse of that information that makes this such a scandal.
It's quite the allegation there from Pat McFadden, because, of course, we don't know if these individuals did actually know or if they just thought there's quite a bit of activity down the corridor. I think I might take a punt on that. Either way, I mean, bad look, terrible look. But isn't one of the most irritating things about this entire scandal just how trivial it is? Craig Williams is a man who is now likely to lose his £90,000 a year job over a £100 bet.
Well, that's right, of course. I mean, Craig Williams has admitted having a flutter and an error of judgment. We haven't heard yet a comment about what happened there with Laura Saunders. But yeah, no question, it is a tiny, compared to the figures you're talking about, Tom, a tiny amount of money. But I think it goes to the heart of an issue of trust. I mean, Labour's making a lot of mileage here, saying that they'll restore public service if they become the next government. And there's a feeling here that you've got people, whether or not they've done it, looks like allegedly they may have taken action here to enrich themselves with knowledge they may have got from hearing a chatter in the corridor somewhere in their workplace or in number 10. Now, they deny any wrongdoing, I'm sure. We'll wait and see how it plays out. But that's the political damage from it. And that's why I think Rishi Sunak had to act, irrespective of whether there's any wrongdoing, because people are voting next Thursday, and all the time we are asking about this very matter. I mean, today it's on page 1 of the Telegraph with claims about the Met Police leaking this information, and denied also by Scotland Yard.
Yes, I guess at the very least it shows a stunning lack of judgment. But Christopher, I sense that the Conservatives want to be talking about immigration today, specifically illegal immigration. They're claiming that migrants are actually staying put in Calais, waiting for a Labour government, if that comes to pass, because then there's no chance of them going to Rwanda.
That's right. That was a point made by Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, on a TV debate last night, and supported by reporting by the Telegraph today. They've been talking to migrants waiting in the Grand Synth camp in France. They have found people saying we are waiting for a change of government. We've seen evidence that this Rwanda plan, much attacked by Labour and the opposition, is working to a degree. You've got migrants moving into Southern Ireland to avoid being sent to Rwanda. And on day one, Sir Keir Starmer, if he becomes Prime Minister, has said he will abolish the Rwanda plan. These first flights won't take off, as the Tories want, in late July. There are a dozen or so challenges already to that happening, so there is some doubt that could happen, even if the Tories do win the government and do win the election and defy the polls. But yeah, I think that's a point. I think that point did strike home in that TV debate last night when the Prime Minister made that point. They're waiting here for a Labour government, and of course the Labour would say, well, they think they can deal with the issue of small boats by working more closely with enforcement authorities on the continent. Today's a big day, by the way, on the numbers of people who come across. It's gone through 50,000, we think, since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister back in October 2022. So 50,000 crossings, which should shortly be confirmed by the Home Office, have come across since Mr Sunak entered Downing Street.
Goodness me, a pretty symbolic moment there. Christopher Hope, thank you very much for all of that very latest. And it'll be fascinating to see the precise number today and where that matches with previous large days given the weather. But Christopher Hope there, our political editor.
I don't know about you, but I just don't understand, considering these numbers, why this isn't being treated as a national emergency. I mean, surely 50,000 people just since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister.
That is
Should any sovereign nation allow that?
That's 25,000 a year. And compared to the numbers, the hundreds of thousands coming into Italy, I think 80,000 in Germany, the higher numbers in France.
Yes, but Italy is in the Mediterranean, right?
Right, but
We've
I
got
think
the benefit of being an island.
But look at the context.
Where there's only a channel. It can't be beyond the wit of man to prevent such crossings.
Look at the context here. I mean, literally millions who have crossed from Mexico into the United States across the southern border.
OK, well,
a
not
border
an
that's
issue.
patrolled.
Not an issue.
Look at no, I'm saying that the United Kingdom comparatively has less illegal migration than almost any other developed country.
So we should be grateful.
No.
So we should be grateful that our government can't secure our borders.
It's an issue.
Oh, it could be worse. We could be like Italy.
But it could be
worse.
worse.
It could be worse. We could be like the United States.
Yes, of course it could be worse.
President Biden has absolutely failed when it comes to illegal migration.
Yes, of course it could be worse. That's not a controversial thing to say.
Yes, but I'm saying that doesn't matter because I care about this country and I think border control has to actually happen. It makes an absolute mockery of our nation anyway. Moving on.
Now, the qualification for the knockout stage may not have come in the fashion that most fans wanted, but England are through to the last 16 in the Euros.
They are indeed. Now, the Three Lions captain and all-time top goal scorer, Harry Kane, was heavily criticised for his lacklustre performance against Denmark.
BBC presenter Gary Lineker called him out, saying he needed to do better. But manager Gareth Southgate knows that the shirt comes with pressure.
We fully understand everything we do is going to be scrutinised, so I'm very comfortable living that life. But I don't need to engage in external because I'm my own biggest critic, and I think our players are as well. So there's nothing to be gained from us that's going to help improve us listening to...
Right, well, joining us now is GB News reporter Jack Carson, who's in a fan zone in Birmingham. I mean, Jack, the match isn't for a little while. Is there anyone there yet?
Well, preparations are underway here in Birmingham at this fan zone. Of course, it's a boiling hot day, and can England deliver a scorcher of a performance on the pitch tonight against Slovenia? I mean, you can see here some of the preparations, some of the benches getting ready. We've got plenty of alcohol in the boxes ready to be loaded into the bar because it's going to be a thirsty one tonight with how hot it is, as thousands of fans are set to descend both here and in fan zones across the country as well. But just what are really England's chances tonight? I mean, Slovenia, we should beat them. This should be a comfortable game for us, and Gareth Southgate knows, of course, that this is a game that he has to win to really prove those doubters and prove those critics wrong. He's come under criticism, as you said, as has Harry Kane and Declan Rice as well, who have come out fighting, say, to judges after the tournament. But of course, really, the performances on the pitch so far, they'll know haven't been good enough, and it's how they get themselves into the game tonight, how well they start, and whether we'll see, as we have done over the last couple of games, do we sit back after going 1-0 up, or do we try and go for more? Try and really put the game to Slovenia and put it to bed, possibly, before half-time. England, realistically, need to win their group, need to top the group today to face an easier side in the round of 16. Even if we win and possibly come second, depending on how Denmark's group go, we could well face Germany in the round of 16, which is probably not something that England fans want tonight. But how are the England fans feeling? We've been out on the streets of Birmingham today. Here's what they told us.
I think from watching their game, the last two games, they're not really playing as a team. I think they're playing individually.
I think there's a lot of media bashing going on about how badly we're playing. We've got the point. We got the points we needed at the beginning. Slow and steady. I know it's not exciting. It's not everybody's cup of tea the way we play. I think as individuals they could be playing better, but I think we'll win tonight, despite being through anyway.
I think England are going to come good. I know they haven't been playing well, and you've got Harry Kane having a go at Lineker, or Lineker having a go at Harry, but I think the boys are going to prove everybody wrong.
We need a bit more convincing. We need to really say, well, OK, we're going to go out there, we're really going to get these. We want to win these. That team doesn't all the wants to win. They're just playing for the money, whichever they might be playing for. Let's get out there and do what you can do. See if we get through the semis or even the final, and have a bit of quality in your hearts.
Start to show the performances that we know they can produce with the quality of players that we've got. Jude Bellingham, Harry Kane, Bukayo Saka. It's going to be a tough selection for Gareth Southgate tonight, with the players maybe that he hasn't been impressed with as much over the first couple of group games. But maybe I can give them a bit of good luck. We've got a target.
Oh, there we go.
Can I do it? Oh, we go. Yes! There we go. There we go.
We never doubted you, Jack. We never doubted you. Jack, are you going to find yourself a little space on the bench for this evening, superstar?
Well, maybe I'm a decent second half substitute, maybe for 1-0 down.
I meant in the super fan section.
No. We need to ship you off to Germany. Jack Carson, thank you so much for bringing us that. I'm sorry, I'm being told we can have a look at a replay now. A live action replay.
There we go.
Here we go. And we're just splendid stuff. Oh, absolutely. I mean, Jack, be honest. When you practiced that shot, did it go as well as it did on live television?
I had 2 practices beforehand. One missed very badly and one went in. So third time lucky with me there.
Fantastic stuff. Well, brilliant to see you from a fan zone in preparation. And I'm noting that they've let you in early and there are boxes and boxes of booze. I think you probably deserve to crack one open, but don't tell anyone. Jack Carson, thanks very much for joining us. Really good stuff.
Jack, you can see why he got an award for his reporting, can't you?
100%.
Very good indeed. Well, coming up, summer has finally arrived, as you can see, but there have been a few warnings. Many warnings over the health risks of hot weather. But are such warnings really necessary? Or are we infantilising people? Is it time to just shut up and enjoy the sun?
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So, question is, what can we do to get young people to eat healthy food? Here's dietitian and nutrition consultant Helen Bond. Helen, what do you think?
Eating habits formed at this age tend to persist into later life. We know we're eating too much fat, sugar, salt, and not enough of the good things like fibre, fruits and vegetables, all of those things. So yes, we need to help this age group so they have the skill set and they have the nutrition knowledge to take that forward.
Do you agree that it is impossible to eat healthily on a budget and quickly as well, or do you have any sort of fail-safe, affordable and very quick to prep meals that you'd recommend youngsters try?
It doesn't have to be expensive either, but you have to have those kind of cost-cutting hacks and those time-consaving things in the kitchen. Make use, I always say, of things like peas, beans and lentils, which are a type of pulse, very inexpensive compared to meat, and yet they double up as one of your 5 a day, and also a great source of plant-based protein. If you overget milk as something, you have too much milk, maybe make some lattes.
I just wanted to throw a shoe at the TV, really, because was there nothing else on or nothing else available? The point being, there is an audience, there's obviously an appeal, there's obviously people are watching this stuff. So what are they doing? Are they watching and not cooking?
I think that's it. They're watching and maybe enjoying all the cookery programmes like I do. And I'm a typical person in the kitchen. I must have about 100 cookbooks. But sometimes when you are time poor, you've got to feed a family or you've got to feed yourself and everything, you don't really know where to start. And I think that's why apps and having things online for this younger audience makes it much more accessible. Start with one recipe and build it up from there. Like I said,
The People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 1 and the sun has come out across the United Kingdom. But apparently it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, a yellow heat health alert has come into force for most of England as temperatures are set to hit a balmy 31 degrees Celsius in many parts of the country.
But the question is, we were wondering, should we all just be quiet or shut up and enjoy the hot weather without thinking about all the potential risks?
Well, let's pose that question to the pharmacist and health expert, Thorin Govind. Thorin, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. A lot of people do get irritated when they hear these quite opaque colour health alerts. I mean, goodness me, can we not just understand that it's sunny, probably wear a bit of sun cream?
Well, I was just about to pop out for my ice cream, so that's why I've come back here to speak to you specially, because obviously when the sun comes out, especially in England, and having probably spent most of the rest of the year with our umbrellas, we all get a bit excited. And also, we're not especially geared up. Our buildings, even, offices, they're not exactly geared up for the sunny weather. So I have to say, I understand why we all go a little bit over the top, perhaps, when the sun comes out and we all get a little bit excited. But there's lots of health conditions that we also have to think about when it comes to the sun. So when I was younger, I actually suffered from a bit of heat stroke. So I can definitely say it's something people need to avoid. And it's very easy to spend some time in the sun and almost not think about how much water you're drinking, how hydrated you're staying. If you're out on those beaches, there'll be a few people having a few pints and glasses of wine. And of course, alcohol can dehydrate you as well. But there's lots to be thankful about when the weather comes out as well. So I think we've got to enjoy the boost it gives to our mood, but also think about our health as well.
Well, Thorin, millions of us, decamp to the Costa del Sol or other sunny climates just to get some sunshine, just to get these types of temperatures, even hotter. And we all seem to get along OK. Do you think people take actually more precautions when they're abroad than when they're in this country? They assume that perhaps, it can't be that hot here. Or, I don't know. I'm trying to think of why we need all of these health warnings.
Well, I don't think we're used to dealing with the weather here. If you think about when we go abroad, half my suitcase, half your suitcase is probably packed with sun cream, with clothes that are appropriate. I have to say, some of the clothing you might wear on your beach resort might not be the ones you're going to be wearing to your place of work. So there's a few additional considerations when it comes to the weather here. And also, I think we aren't, the buildings, aircon, we're probably, I don't know about you, but sometimes when you're at work, you might be fighting about the temperature. I don't know, you'll have to tell me if you two fight over you between the temperature.
We fight for everything.
But there's no maximum or minimum temperature. It just has to be reasonable in the office. And what might be reasonable to one person might be horrendous to another as well.
Yes, it's true. Men like it colder than women.
Yes, that is true.
So women are there shivering in the office, unless, of course, they're menopausal. Then they'll probably benefit from the aircon. But shall we bring in comedian Mike McLean? Because he thinks we should just enjoy the weather, forget about the public health warnings. And they're like, Mike, do you think we go a bit overboard? We just went to Burton-on-Trent. It was 28 degrees and overcast, and there's a yellow heat warning.
Well, I don't think you should ignore the weather. I didn't say that, but I think you should enjoy it, definitely. We don't get it as often as we should. In fact, I'm from Manchester, so as soon as the sun's out, everybody's out. Nobody goes into work. It rains 364 days of the year there. So I think it's great to get a bit of sun. It puts us in a good mood, and we need to be in a good mood. Have you watched England lately at the Euros? That's another great reason we should be out in the sun. So I'm all for the sun. And plus, being Spanish, I grew up in Spain, so the sun's something that I absolutely love, and it's nice to have it, isn't it?
Yeah, Thorin, do you think that sometimes we can almost have too much public health messaging, and it almost makes us numb to when there actually is a need for public health messaging? I mean, if the sun reaches 30 degrees, do we really need to blast all the airwaves with these yellow weather warnings?
We've got to be careful.
Sorry, let's throw that to Thorin first.
Hopefully, people do check the weather before they go out, especially in Manchester. Both of us probably check the weather to see if we need our umbrella. At least our umbrella's coming in handy today to protect us from the sun. So there's that benefit. And I think, yeah, we can be overwhelmed with healthcare messaging, but anything that tells me to go and buy an ice cream is something that I am definitely supporting.
Well, Mike, do you think that sometimes we're a bit infantilized by all these public health experts? You know, we're told that we need to drink a bit of water. We're told that we need to put some sun cream on. We're told that we shouldn't eat cakes and sweeties. We're told, what else are we told? Oh, you can't go near a vape or a cigarette. I guess we know that cigarettes are very bad indeed for us, yes. So maybe I'll leave smoking out. But we do seem to be bombarded by this messaging, don't we?
We do, and sometimes like my old man used to say, my old dad used to say, take everything with a pinch of salt. I do think you've got to put a bit of cream on, but not lots of cream on. And I do think you should eat ice cream, lots of it, especially in the heat. And it is safe to be, it's good to be hydrated as well. Maybe it is a beer or two. I'm not saying available. But yeah.
They'd say no to the salt, though.
Yeah, well, you can't ignore the science, can you? Because that's what they're great at, you know. But what you can do is just take everything in moderation.
I'm just absolutely delighted that perhaps this is the first day of the year where public health messaging is saying, yes, please do eat ice cream, rather than avoid all of the calories and all of the sugar. But Thorin and indeed to Mike as well, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Well, there you go. It's time to have an ice cream and a little bit of sun, in moderation. Anyway, still to come, the war of words between the Tories and the Labour Party over the claim that migrants are waiting in France for a Labour government before they cross to the UK. We'll be speaking to Immigration Minister Tom Pursglove after your headlines with Sophia.
Emily, thank you. It's 1:33. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. The wife of Julian Assange says he'll seek a full pardon after agreeing to plead guilty to a single felony count of illegally obtaining and disclosing national security material. The 52-year-old founder of WikiLeaks left the UK this morning and is due to appear before a federal judge in the Mariana Islands, a US territory in the Western Pacific. He's expected to be sentenced to 5 years, roughly the equivalent of the time he's already served in Britain before returning to Australia. The Conservative Party says it can no longer support two candidates accused of placing bets on when the election would take place. Craig Williams and Laura Sanders are the subject of inquiries by the Gambling Commission. Both will still appear on election ballots because the deadlines for nominations has now passed. The Labour Party is outlining a plan to tackle knife crime. It will include creating a new cross-government coalition to work on solutions, as well as community hubs involving youth workers and careers advisors. The Conservatives criticise the plan, accusing Labour of failing to tackle knife crime in London. The King and Queen are hosting a ceremonial welcome for the Emperor and Empress of Japan. They began their three-day visit at the event at the Horse Guards Parade this afternoon, with the royal couple greeting a line of dignitaries, including Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Princess Anne isn't taking part in today's welcome while she recovers in hospital after being injured by a horse. And a yellow health alert is in force across most of the country today, with temperatures set to exceed 30 degrees. Yesterday's high topped 28 degrees in Surrey, making it the hottest day of the year so far. But forecasters are warning it won't last long, with showers and possibly thunderstorms predicted later tomorrow. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2685 and €1.1839. The price of gold is £1,835.48 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,259 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A hot one today for some, but not all. It is much cloudier across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland from this old weather front that is also introducing slightly cooler air to the far northwest. But ahead of it, across the bulk of England and Wales, it is a very warm day, hotter than yesterday for South Wales and South West England because it is a bit sunnier, but a cloudier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, brightening up in the west, but that weather front is also providing some outbreaks of rain across eastern Scotland, and we might just see 1 or 2 afternoon heavy showers over the hills of northern England and southern Scotland. Temperatures in the north close to average, but in the south well above. We could easily top out at 30 Celsius close to London this afternoon. As we go into the evening, we'll still have some of that cloud and rain across the far northeast, so a dull and damp end to the day across the east coast of Scotland, but something a bit brighter further west, but it is quite a bit fresher here as well. The cloud breaking up a little more across Northern Ireland, so some brighter spells likely. I say there's small chance of a shower or two over northern England and southern Scotland, but plenty of fine, dry and very warm weather here, but the heat is really across the south, a balmy summer's evening here. As we go through the night, not a great deal of change. I think the rain will peter out across eastern parts of Scotland. Could turn quite misty this evening, and the threat of this low cloud just sticking to that east coast as we go into tomorrow as well. Still 1 or 2 scattered showers over northern England and southern Scotland, but most places dry. Quite a contrast in temperatures. A comfortable night in the northwest with temperatures down to single figures. Much of England and Wales staying in the mid-teens, so quite a warm and humid night, and another hot day for many tomorrow. Could be quite cloudy across the eastern counties of England early doors. Some uncertainty about whether that will clear away, but many places again fine and sunny. Still quite cloudy in eastern Scotland, but a brighter day for Northern Ireland, and again very warm in that sunshine over parts of eastern England. Goodbye.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello to you, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to the westbound M62 firstly from the M60. That's Eccles, junction 12 to Birchwood at 11. A lane shut, a collision causing 1 or 2 delays on the live cameras. Underneath Paul Talbot in South Wales, eastbound M4 as you come off at Llandarcy 43. There's a broken down lorry on that exit slip, so lane shut. It's queuing on the main carriageway back past 44 at Llansamlet. Anti-clock M25, Maple Cross at 17 to the M40 at 16. Now queuing back towards Chorleywood at junction 18. There was a broken down van, though that's now being cleared. And the eastbound side of the A31 in Hampshire, that's shut from Salisbury Road in Ringwood through towards Pulner, queuing back towards the Ashley Heath interchange, very slow there due to an earlier lorry fire. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past 1. And we're going to speak now to the Immigration Minister, Tom Pursglove. Because, Tom, the Conservative Party is saying that people are now waiting to cross the Channel in anticipation of a Keir Starmer government. But how does that correspond with the fact that 50,000 people have now crossed the English Channel since Rishi Sunak pledged to stop the boats?
Well, what is clear is that we are the only party with the ability and with a credible plan to get on and tackle illegal migration. The fact is that we know deterrents work. They are vitally important in our efforts to tackle this issue head on, and we know that, for example, from the experience with Albania, where we've seen a 90% reduction in Albanian arrivals as a direct result of the cooperation with the Albanian government. And we also know, for example, that in the context of Rwanda, that in Ireland there have been many that have been saying that they've gone to Ireland as a direct result of the concern about being relocated to Rwanda. So it doesn't surprise me really that we've seen these reports today with people explicitly saying that they want a Labour government because they think that with a Labour government, and they're right about this of course, they'll scrap the Rwanda policy and then be able to come to the United Kingdom in the way that they'd hoped.
Is there any concrete evidence, though, to support that claim, or is that just something you're chucking out there during an election campaign? Is there any real hard evidence that people are actually in Calais saying, you know what, I'm going to wait till July the 5th?
Well, you've seen, rather like I have, the quotes in the newspapers with people saying very explicitly that their decisions are being dictated by the position that we have taken in saying that we're going to have these relocations to Rwanda. And there is a very clear choice at this election. The Labour Party will cancel that policy, and these people will then make those journeys via unseaworthy vessels, paying a criminal gang to do so. That just cannot be right. What we need is a government that's going to deliver on that partnership with Rwanda to end the link between getting in a small boat, coming to the United Kingdom, and simply thinking that you're going to be able to stay. As I say, we know deterrence work because of the Albania experience. And candidly, what just isn't good enough is for the Labour Party to continually turn around and say, we're simply going to do the things that we happen to be already doing in relation to the small boats operational command, with no credible alternative country to send people to.
I understand that, but a returns agreement with Albania is one thing. Getting the Rwanda flights off the ground is another, as we've seen so many delays to this flagship policy. What guarantee is there that these flights will take off if the Conservatives are re-elected?
So we have a plan that is being operationalised to send these flights to Rwanda in July. We've obviously passed the safety of Rwanda legislation, which explicitly has switched off the grounds of appeal that have been used previously to thwart those relocations to Rwanda. We are confident that that legislation will do the job. It's in line with our international obligations, but we can't continue to have those efforts thwarted. Ultimately, this is about putting those evil criminal gangs out of business and saving lives at sea. And as I say, there's just such a clear choice on this at this election. A Conservative government with Conservative MPs who back these efforts, or a Labour Party that just simply want to say that they have a plan, but all they're proposing is doing the things we're already doing, with no alternative countries to be able to send people to, which simply means that you're willing to take unlimited numbers of people from certain nationalities.
Tom, I think a lot of people find it very hard to see why the Prime Minister called the election for just before, not a long time before and not after, but just before these flights were scheduled to go off. He could have called the election for 3 weeks later if he really believed that these Rwanda flights will go. Is it not the case, as we've read in some reports, that there are going to be more legal hurdles in the way, more activist lawyers trying to stop this plan?
Well, we know that we've been presented with obstruction and challenges all the way through when it comes to Parliament and the approach that parliamentarians in other parties have taken. But we've also had those concerns that the judiciary have raised, and we've responded to them very specifically through the legislation that is now in place. I actually think the Prime Minister was right to call the election. The media and others were continually speculating about what the date would be. I think the country does need certainty around the future governance. I think it is right that, having made the economic progress that we have, that we give the country the opportunity to kick on with surety about the future, and the falls in inflation that we've seen getting back to that normal level when it comes to inflation, which will hopefully lead to mortgage rates being cut, is an important milestone. But there is this credible plan here, and people have got a really clear choice about whether they want to address this issue or whether they're willing to pass on that. I would encourage people to get in behind us at this election and back the plan that has delivered results, but which the next logical step is to get these flights off the ground, and we've got the mechanics now available to us to be able to do that.
And Tom Purseglove, we're hearing today that the, two candidates that have been caught up in this betting scandal have had Conservative support withdrawn. They'll still be standing in the election. Did Rishi Sunak, did he act swiftly enough? It's been days since we found out that Craig Williams had these allegations against him.
So I am as cross and angry as the Prime Minister is about what has happened, and he's right to have said that. And I know that that is a view that is shared amongst many Conservative colleagues who've been out on the media and in other conversations that we've been having. But it is right that we deal in fact. And so these internal inquiries have led to this decision today to withdraw support from those candidates. I support the stance that has been taken in that regard. But we have had to get to the bottom of that. And it is also right, I think, that given the sensitivities of the fact that there is this independent Gambling Commission inquiry going on as well, that we've had to tread carefully. The integrity of that does need to be
But had he not
maintained.
already admitted
But what is clearly not
the fact?
acceptable is people
Had he not
placing bets on outcomes where they
Tom
have insider
Pursglove,
knowledge.
But take Craig Williams as an example. Had he not already admitted that he placed this bet? Had he not already apologised? Why then was it not, a fait accompli that Rishi Sunak would then withdraw that support, or Conservative HQ would do the same? It seems all a bit slow, don't you see?
I think it's right that the leadership has wanted to fully understand the picture and the sequencing and the chronology. I'm not close enough to the detail of those internal inquiries for obvious reasons. Those have been handled at a level and in a way in which I'm just not a party to. But I do think we've got to the right conclusion here with that withdrawal of support for those candidates. And quite clearly, it is just not acceptable to be placing bets where you have insider knowledge.
The right conclusion, perhaps a week too late, but there we are. Tom Pursglove, Migration Minister, really appreciate your time here on GB News. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Now, still to come on the show, Julian Assange. He's been released from prison after striking a deal with the United States. He's expected to now be a free man. We're asking, is the WikiLeaks founder a sinner or a saint?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
We're very lucky to have an heir to the throne who is dutiful, loves his family, and he still takes all the children to school in the morning. And you can't really hope for anything more than that, can you? And he's behaved with such dignity. He must be so worried about his father and his lovely wife.
I wonder what the royals are going to do if the next generation of people aren't armed forces, if they don't join the army or the navy or the air force or whatever.
This is very interesting because Prince William doesn't necessarily want little George to do that. He doesn't feel it's necessary. But it's such a stamp on the royal family, isn't it? And with all the costumes, and they're the head of the army. And so what would they do without that? I find that very difficult. I think it's the same with religion, actually, because he's not religious, William. He does go once or twice a year, but he hasn't got the same passion about religion that King Charles does. And I think it's very difficult. I think it'll be maybe a very changed royal family.
Indeed, yeah. We don't know yet who's going to be attending Royal Ascot, but we suspect at the very least the Queen, probably the King and Queen, and maybe even the Prince of Wales as well.
You can't keep the Queen away from horses. I mean, she absolutely loves them. She used to ride them non-stop when she was little. And fascinatingly, her mother never bothered about it because they weren't mobiles then. And she would go off riding for hours and sleep in a field.
What an incredible
childhood. And then come back the next day. She never worried about her. She thought she was sensible. She loves animals, dogs and horses. That's one of the things she had very much in common with the late Queen.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Right, well, 1:50 is the time, and Julian Assange has begun his journey back to Australia following his release from a UK prison.
The WikiLeaks founder reached a plea deal with the United States, which will see him plead guilty to one charge and go free precisely because he's already spent this time behind bars.
Yes, his wife told reporters that Julian will be a free man once a plea deal with the United States is signed off by a judge tomorrow.
Well, the chair of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson, joins us now. And Greg, to some people, Julian Assange is a freedom fighter, someone who fought the monolithic state of the United States and this surveillance state and all the rest of it. To others, he's a real danger to national security, who didn't go through any sort of checks and just dumped data online, risking the lives of people. Firstly, what's the view of the Republican Party on this? And is this plea deal something that will have an impact, perhaps, on how people view the United States of America?
Yeah, look, I think you can take both sides of this. I think the Republican Party in general has people that would argue that he is a sinner or a saint. And I think part of it is that there's a real defense of freedom of speech and of freedom of the press right now. And I think a conviction of Julian Assange would have been a bit of a threat to free press and freedom of speech. So, look, that doesn't mean I agree with what he did. It doesn't mean I like him. It doesn't mean I'm on his side. I mean, in many ways, he's an enemy of the United States and of the UK. But this is this might be political. It's Biden kind of reaching for the libertarian votes that might lean his way because he pardoned or at least approved of the plea deal. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that you might not agree with what he did, but as a member of the press, he had that right. So he might be a sinner in my view, but he's not a criminal. So I thought the outcome was very good.
Greg, does this guilty plea end the debate about his innocence? Of course, this is a very emotional debate for a lot of people. Every time we see Julian Assange, huge numbers of protesters. He's got a huge amount of support worldwide. Do you think this will put this all to bed?
It very well might, Emily. I think, look, it's wise to remind people that the real criminal here was Bradley Manning, who was actually guilty and received a guilty sentence for stealing secrets and releasing those secrets. So he broke the law, and that's very clear. Whereas Julian Assange, it's a little more of a gray area. Should he have released that information? I would argue no. I wish he had more discipline about it, but that's his right. And so the press should be. The press should hold government accountable. That's what they should be doing, is investigating. And they're not doing that enough lately, especially with how one-sided they are. But I also have to remind people that, Bradley Manning his sentence was commuted by Obama only because he was in a favored identity group. So I think that's, we have to be really careful, with the weaponization of the justice system that we've seen in the last few years in many cases. And this could be one of them where, one side got some favored treatment in the case of Bradley/Chelsea Manning because he's in a favored identity group, whereas Julian Assange, has been basically in jail for, or in captivity since 2012. I'm not sure that's the right outcome.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed, Craig Swenson. You're from Republicans Overseas,
Emily.
The chair, in fact. Thank you very much indeed for your time. It's an interesting one. Let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/yoursay. Also, lots of you have been getting in touch about the summer of 1976. Lots of stories.
Oh, my goodness, I've been loving reading these. We've just got a very little time, but my goodness me. Jerry says, of course, it wasn't just the summer of 1976, but the spring flowers were out in February. No light jacket was even needed until November. The whole year was beautiful.
Keep them coming. We'll read some more in a little bit. Stay with us.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A hot one today for some, but not all. It is much cloudier across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland from this old weather front that is also introducing slightly cooler air to the far northwest. But ahead of it, Across the bulk of England and Wales, it is a very warm day, hotter than yesterday for South Wales and South West England because it is a bit sunnier, but a cloudy day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, brightening up in the west, but Weatherford is also providing some outbreaks of rain across eastern Scotland, and we might just see 1 or 2 afternoon heavy showers over the hills of northern England and southern Scotland. Temperatures in the north close to average, but in the south well above. We could easily top out at 30 Celsius close to London this afternoon. As we go into the evening, we'll still have some of that cloud and rain across the far northeast, so a dull and damp end to the day across the east coast of Scotland, but something a bit brighter further west, but it is quite a bit fresher here as well. The cloud breaking up a little more across Northern Ireland, so some brighter spells likely. I say there's small chance of a shower or two over northern England and southern Scotland, but plenty of fine, dry and very warm weather here, but the heat is really across the south, a balmy summer's evening here. As we go through the night, not a great deal of change. I think the rain will peter out across the eastern parts of Scotland. Could turn quite misty this evening, and the threat of this low cloud just sticking to that east coast as we go into tomorrow as well. Still 1 or 2 scattered showers over northern England and southern Scotland, but most places dry. Quite a contrast in temperatures. A comfortable night in the northwest with temperatures down to single figures. Much of England and Wales staying in the mid-teens, so quite a warm and humid night, and another hot day for many tomorrow. Could be quite cloudy across the eastern counties of England early doors. Some uncertainty about whether that will clear away, but many places again fine and sunny. Still quite cloudy in eastern Scotland, but a brighter day for Northern Ireland, and again very warm in that sunshine over parts of eastern England. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win big this summer. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. You have to hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex, and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you. This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 25th of June. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
A major development in the election betting scandal engulfing the Conservatives. The party has now withdrawn support for their candidates accused of placing bets on the election debate. But has the damage already been done?
Meanwhile, there's an election clash over immigration. The Conservatives say migrants are queuing up in Calais, just waiting for a Labour government to scrap the Rwanda plan. Labour is hit back, saying migrants aren't waiting, and Rishi Sunak has failed to deal with the problem.
And Julian Assange is released from prison after reaching a deal with the United States. He's expected now to become a free man. But is the WikiLeaks founder a hero, or did he jeopardise national security by dumping and revealing all of this military intelligence?
And the King and Queen have welcomed the Japanese Emperor and Empress, who are on a 3-day state visit to the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, Princess Anne has spent a second night in hospital after a horse-related injury. And thank you very much indeed for sending in all your stories from 1976. It's been very interesting, actually, because neither of us were around in 1976, as you might have guessed. Although you're aging since you've been my co-host. Janet says in 1976 we had heavy snow in the first week in June. A few days later, the heatwave started. After a few weeks, Dennis Howell was appointed Minister for the Heatwave. Yes, he was indeed. Although I think they called it Minister of the Drought or something similar. He clearly did a very effective rain dance because it started to chuck it down. Well, there you go.
Yeah, no, and of course we've been talking about 76 because
yes,
you might have noticed the weather outside today is a little bit hot. It feels like summer has suddenly arrived, but we've been looking back, of course, at that famous summer, or not just summer, as Jerry wrote in to say, of course, the whole year was unusually warm, and Phil has written in to say that the whole summer of fun with great weather, with no commotion of scaremongering about that weather that we see at the moment.
And Sandra, the long hot summer was in 1976 and I was expecting my first baby in June. The heat was unbearable and I spent a lot of time sitting in a bath of cold water. We didn't have a shower. Well, I feel for you.
Ooh.
Oh, that must have been, yes, a little bit unbearable, actually.
Well, Stephen had a much better time. He was 15 years old and living on the Isle of Wight at the time with 3 summer jobs.
Gosh,
he'd start in the morning with a 7 a.m. paper round, then go on to work in a camp through the morning and then a cafe in the afternoon. But because it was so warm and the days were so long, he had time to relax on the beach all the way through to sunset.
Oh, fantastic stuff. They don't make them like you anymore, do they, Stephen? Thank you very much for getting in touch with your stories. gbnews.com/your say is the way to, but it's your headlines with Sophia.
Emily, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 2. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your top story this hour: the King and Queen put on a show of pageantry and pomp this afternoon as they welcomed the Emperor and Empress of Japan. They began their 3-day state visit at an event in Horse Guards Parade, with the royal couple greeting a line of dignitaries, including Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Princess Anne isn't taking part in today's welcome while she recovers in hospital after being injured by a horse. The wife of Julian Assange says he'll seek a full pardon after agreeing to plead guilty to a single UK this morning and is due to appear before a federal judge in the Mariana Islands, a US territory in the Western Pacific. He's expected to be sentenced to 5 years, roughly the equivalent of the time he's already served in Britain before returning to Australia. The Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, told Parliament the case has gone on too long.
I've been very clear, as both the Labor leader in opposition but also as Prime Minister, that regardless of the views that people have about Mr Assange's activities, the case has dragged on for too long. Yeah. There's nothing to be gained by his continued incarceration and we want him brought home to Australia.
Assange's release caps off a long and bitter standoff with the United States that started with his arrest on a Swedish warrant in 2010. He's since become a divisive symbol, celebrated by some as a crusader for truth, but criticised by others who view him as a threat to global security. Through WikiLeaks, Assange has revealed state secrets related to US activities in Iraq and even published stolen emails from the US Democratic Party, which damaged Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. In other news, the Conservative Party says it can no longer support two candidates accused of placing bets on when the election would take place. Craig Williams and Laura Saunders are the subject of inquiries by the Gambling Commission. Both will still appear on election ballots because the deadlines for nominations has now passed. Meanwhile, Labour is pledging to halve knife crime within a decade if it wins a general election. The party's plan includes creating a new cross-government coalition to work on solutions, as well as community hubs involving youth workers and careers advisors. Sir Keir Starmer says cracking down on knife crime is a moral mission.
I was the Chief Prosecutor for 5 years, and therefore I prosecuted many cases involving the use of knives, and I've made it my personal mission to deal with this. It is a moral mission so far as I'm concerned. It isn't a question of urban versus rural. In fact, I think there's more knife crime, sadly, in rural areas, or at least it's going up more quickly. And I think it's not fair on the families we've been hearing from this morning to simply point the finger to somebody else. This is something which a government needs to take responsibility for. I will take responsibility for, on a cross-party basis, to make the change that we need.
A yellow heat health alert is in force across most of the country, with temperatures set to exceed 30 degrees today. Yesterday's high topped 28 degrees in Surrey, making it the hottest day of the year so far. That's almost certain to be surpassed today, with central London expecting some of the hottest conditions. The RNLI is urging people to take care, with crowds expected to cool off in coastal areas. But forecasters are warning the heat won't last long, with showers and possibly thunderstorms predicted later tomorrow. Meteorologist Tamsin Green says Britain isn't prepared for hot weather.
Going to be hot. It is going to be unseasonably hot. Temperatures are going to be above average for the time of year, 10 to 12 degrees above average for the time of year for some of us. And, you know, obviously our infrastructure isn't built for this kind of heat. We don't have air conditioning. We don't even have ceiling fans. You know, in order to stay cool, you've got to do just simple things like keep the blinds or the shades down in your window so the heat doesn't come in through the window, but also circulate the air through the day as much as you can.
And the first samples ever collected from the dark side of the moon have arrived on Earth. China has become the first country to successfully bring back samples from the lunar far side. The re-entry capsule of the Chang'e 6 probe touched down in northern Chinese region of Inner Mongolia this morning. It was carrying lunar soil, which was collected earlier in June. It will now be analysed by scientists as China continues its efforts to become a space and science powerhouse. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
$50,000. The number that has been surpassed today in terms of individuals crossing the channel illegally since the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak cast his promise to stop the boats. Well, let's find out what is really going on with our political editor, Christopher Hope, joining us live from Westminster. Christopher, it is a stark reminder.
Tom, hello there from College Green here in Westminster, and hello Emily too. That's right, a stark reminder, I think, of a failure by this Prime Minister to tackle the issue of small boats. Of course, he became leader, didn't he, in October 2022. Since then, over 50,000 people have crossed the Channel and come here to the UK from northern France. We saw today Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, out there bobbing around on a boat in the Channel, indicating another boat laden with migrants coming across with a escort boat, a French Navy boat, following behind. The politics here is difficult because, of course, the Tory party say that if you vote Tory, you re-elect this government, then the first flights will take off for Rwanda in late July, and that means that should hopefully act as a disincentive for those trying to get across the Channel from northern France, and we are seeing some of that disincentive working with people going to Ireland, Southern Ireland, to escape the risk of going to Rwanda. Keir Starmer, for Labour's point, they say just we will act on day one, spending money in a different way, working more closely with enforcement bodies on the continent to stop these small boats coming across. Whether that works, we don't know. And Nigel Farage, for the Reform UK party, he's making very clear that it is not going to work. He wonders why on earth we're spending £480 million, giving it to France, trying to ask them to stop these boats coming across with little effect. But the big number, 50,000, that number passed today, of small boats arrivals, people arriving by small boat, is an embarrassment for the Prime Minister.
Yes, I mean, Christopher, you say it's a failure of the Conservatives, and undoubtedly it is, but the odds have been stacked against the government for rather a long time, not least when it comes to the courts.
Yes, of course, the European Court of Human Rights is the court which these lawyers for these individuals will go to try and stop them being sent back to a country where they might be at risk, and that in this sense be Rwanda. That's the concern. There are already challenges to the next cohort, which the Tory government hopes will take off if they win power and take him to Rwanda. The PM, for his part, has slightly made a bed for himself. He's admitted there's a problem with the European Court of Human Rights, but rather than say he'll leave that court and take firm action, he says he won't let a foreign court tell us what to do, and he holds the right to withdraw. So I think the weakness of his political argument is he's said it's a problem, he's identified the cause of it, which is the European Court of Human Rights, but he won't go firmly and say I will leave that court. He says he won't be bossed around by a foreign court, is a form of words, and that I think allows Nigel Farage to come in, those on the right of politics in this country, and say here's your solution. So the problem he identifies a problem, but Farage has the solution. That's quite a weak place to be in politics.
Yeah, I suppose Farage will say he's got a solution. Whether or not turning back the boats is actually practicable with regard to how the French would respond to that is another question. But I should say we're also joined by our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, because, Catherine, it's not just migration that's a big issue today, but also crime, and specifically knife crime.
Yes, that's right. Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. So Keir Starmer has been in London along with star Idris Elba, and he's been meeting families affected by knife crime. One in particular was a mother whose son was killed by someone with a knife that had been bought online and picked up by a 15-year-old with no checks whatsoever. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has said that if Labour come in, it will make it their moral mission to halve knife crime within a decade. They're saying they want to take the politics out of this, that knife crime has surged by, I think, 81% since 2015. So they're proposing various measures to tackle it, stronger sanctions on people found to carry knives, a youth futures programme to target the sort of kids and young people who might fall into that sort of world, and then a yearly summit to track the progress, and also a cross-party coalition with ministers, campaigners, tech executives, and also, crucially, the families that have had their lives torn apart by this.
Catherine, do the Labour Party have credibility, though, when it comes to knife crime? Sadiq Khan, Labour, presiding as London Mayor, and London has seen a rise in knife crime, actually a higher rise in knife crime than anywhere else in the country.
Yes, so knife crime in the capital is up 38% since Sadiq Khan became mayor back in 2015. So, yes, it's a huge problem in the capital, and he also said a few years ago that knife crime was something that would take a generation to solve. That's a comment that I think would be no comfort at all to parents in the capital whose children are out and about, and of course the many, many families who've lost loved ones over the last years, because increasingly we've seen people die on London streets in broad daylight. You know, we had that horrific incident in Hainault just a few weeks ago, where a little boy who literally left his house to go to school was killed in broad daylight at sort of 7:30 in the morning. And talking to knife crime campaigners as I was covering that story there, one of them was saying to me that, you know, it's not just enough to ban zombie knives and all these other knives that they try to, but that actually the vast majority of knife crime is carried out simply by people who have picked up a kitchen knife and use that. And they were saying that all knives, including kitchen knives, should have numbers on them so that they can be identified. But a huge amount of work to be done on this, although Sir Keir Starmer was stressing that he said rural knife crime has gone up more quickly. He said areas like Hertfordshire apparently up 122%. So a huge problem, really, right across the country.
Hertfordshire, of course, adjacent to London. But Catherine Forster, thank you very much for joining us and giving us that update. But now some breaking news. The Gambling Commission has passed information to the Metropolitan Police alleging 5 more officers placed bets relating to the timing of the general election. That's news from the Metropolitan Police that a further 5 officers of the Metropolitan Police placed bets related to the timing of the general election. Christopher Hope, our political editor, joins us now. Christopher, this is a shocking revelation.
It is. We knew one individual from the Rishi Sunak's close protection unit had been arrested on suspicions of placing a bet on the date of the July the 4th election. We now know that 5 more officers have been alerted. The details have been given to the Met Police by the Gambling Commission. We don't know if those 5 officers were part of the team around the PM, the close protection team, Rishi Sunak's protection unit, or somebody else they may have told. But this shows how this scandal is widening and getting more and more serious, and it shows, I think, a lack of discipline of people around with privileged information from the Prime Minister and elsewhere. It looks like some people are taking action on that. Of course, they will deny all wrongdoing, I'm sure, but this shows the issue has not gone away. We have seen earlier today, Tom and Emily, of course, the Prime Minister has ordered an inquiry by the party yesterday. Today took action to remove the support of the Tory party for Craig Williams and Laura Saunders, 2 candidates in the election. Their names will appear still on the ballot paper when voters vote for them in Montgomery and Glendower and Bristol North West respectively, but they will not have the support of the Tory party. But it just shows this problem, this scandal is deepening, not getting any easier for the Prime Minister.
Absolutely, but there's a difference, though, isn't there, between parliamentary candidates placing bets on the general election date and police officers. Quite different in terms of the pressure on Rishi Sunak, surely.
Yes, different in the sense of not a political one. I mean, Rishi Sunak can't be blamed for what officers guarding him are up to. It's up to the Met had its own way of enforcing the law. There's laws to be looked at for that. But it just shows that this secret, the date was discussed quite widely around Rishi Sunak. George Osborne, the former Chancellor, has said on his podcast 40 people knew about the date before it was announced. And it seems that, were that the case, it seems that some people around the PM or heard from other people about the date and maybe allegedly putting some money on the date of this. It just shows a kind of lack of discipline. But I agree, maybe not so damaging for the Prime Minister in the sense it wasn't his key aides, as far as we know, or candidates at the election.
And yet it seems that this scandal has been spreading and growing, and it does give this sense of momentum in this story, which is the very last thing the Conservatives need. They announced this morning the suspension of those 2 candidates we previously mentioned, hoping, I suppose, to put a lid on this story. And yet more news is coming out. It starts to feel like that drip, drip, drip of Partygate.
Yeah. It does.
He's disappeared.
To be fair to Rishi Sunak, he doesn't know who is putting money on. The individuals who did it wouldn't have told the Prime Minister they bet based on information they've been told, so he can't really control it. Only yesterday did we see the Prime Minister for trying to grip it and say, we'll do our own investigation and tell the Gambling Commission what we found out. That's happened overnight, and now we have 2 candidates being suspended. But frankly, why didn't this happen last Thursday when these names first emerged, and even before that, in the case of Craig Williams 2 weeks ago? I don't know why they've been slow to do this, because, of course, people are voting right now about the Tory party and whether it deserves another 5th term in office. The election, the polling day, of course, is a week Thursday, but a fifth of votes are carried out in postal votes. So why not act quicker? He hasn't. And yet again, we saw the PM yesterday in Scotland unveiling his Scottish manifesto. I was one of 6 journalists asking questions. 5 of the questions were about the betting scandal, not about policies. And that's why he had to get ahead of it and try and lance the boil. But as you say, the news here from the Met Police shows the problem is getting worse and worse. The scandal is nowhere near stopping.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope, our political editor there in Westminster, with that breaking news that 5 more Met officers have allegedly placed bets on the general election date and they're being investigated. Different though, right? I mean, Rishi Sunak can't control the Met Police, can he? And whether they heard something about a general election date, surely.
But events, dear boy, events, as was once said.
I do wonder if it's, you know... Lots of people have been doing this for a long time, perhaps.
But this is a story that is cutting through. The YouGov survey tracking the number of stories that have cut through to the percentage of the population. There are 3 stories that have breached 25% awareness. And it is remarkable looking at these surveys when you see actually working in news every day or perhaps being people who watch news programmes every day. It's only ever really the saturation of the percentage of the population that notice these stories is remarkably low, lower than I think most people in politics would realise. But the 3 stories that surpassed 25% of the country noticing them and understanding them in the last few weeks, the death of Michael Mosley, the Prime Minister returning early from D-Day commemorations, and this Conservative Party-linked betting scandal.
Yes, I wonder if 5 questions on this, though, to the Prime Minister is... you know, a lot of people want to know what government is going to do once they get into office, whether it's Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak. Does policy matter more than these types of scandals? Or are you horrified? Lots of people are very horrified that this could happen so close to the Prime Minister, particularly these parliamentary candidates as well. What were they playing at?
Still to come, the search for 19-year-old Jay Slater continues. We'll be hearing why the teenager's parents are unhappy with the police response in Tenerife. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The University of Cambridge has told students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning sexual relationships with professors. The new rules, which come into force next month, beginning of July, include a warning against behaviour that could be interpreted as flirtatious. University staff have been told they must report any behaviour that could constitute a student making advances towards a personal, particularly intimate relationship with them. If you're a tutor, how do you interpret what is flirting and what is just sort of like having a bit of banter?
In fact, we've got to sort
Very nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you.
You see, you didn't even recognise.
Oh, I didn't. I think I'm blushing now. I'm blushing.
So, what's flirting and what's me complimenting your very well-fitting trousers? Yes.
Well, there is a line, because obviously when you're 18 and you go to university, it might be the first time you're away from home. It might be the first time that you're open to maybe a bit of a nightlife, social activity, drinking and all the rest of it. On the flip side, I know a couple who, this pupil ended up dating their professor, and they've been together for about sort of 15 years now. So I used to go after lectures with my professor and the whole seminar. We used to go to the pub afterwards, and I became very good friends with... she was a mature student. She was on the very, very far left of political... you wondered where that was going for a second, didn't you?
We're both reading a huge
Very quick for you, Joe. We're running out of very nice trousers as well. We're running
Thank you, not as snug as Charlie. I think you've got to have some rules in place that there's no abuse of power. Policing it's difficult. We ought to be in a position where you can say, get off, back off, or, banter's fine. Actually, I hate that word. I hate it almost as much as woke. Go on, email in.
Thank you very much. I'm flirting with both.
The People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. Welcome back. It's around 2:25 in the afternoon, and the Emperor and Empress of Japan have received a royal welcome to the United Kingdom as they begin their 3-day state visit.
Well, the couple were greeted with military pomp and pageantry before embarking on a royal carriage procession to Buckingham Palace.
Yes, but the Princess Royal will miss the state visit as she remains in hospital following a head injury thought to be caused by a horse.
Well, royal reporter Richard Palmer joins us now to give us an insight inside this state visit. And thank you so much for joining us. I've read with interest your piece in the Mail, which was pointing to not only the history of this royal family, our royal family and the Japanese royal family, but how that history is intertwined in every aspect of this state visit.
Yes, it is really. I mean, the state visit is a celebration of the closer economic and military ties between the two countries post-Brexit, really. Britain and Japan signed a free trade deal in 2020, and this state visit was postponed from 2020 because of COVID. But I think for people interested in the royal family, it gives us a real opportunity to compare and contrast two of the world's oldest monarchies, two of the most successful royal families, I'd say, but both royal families have faced a fair bit of turmoil in the last few years. So I think it's interesting. The Empress, for example, spent a long time out of the public eye. She spent 11 years away from public life because of a stress-related illness that was said to have been related to the fact that she couldn't produce a male heir. And in Japan, only men can inherit the throne. Like our royal family, their royal family is slimming down. It's been rather enforced on them as well by the fact that women who marry commoners have to leave the royal family. So I believe there are currently about 8 former princesses at the moment can't do royal engagements and are no longer princesses.
Absolutely fascinating, Richard, really fascinating. In terms of their friendship, His Majesty and Japan's Emperor, it goes back a long way. They actually do have a real friendship, don't they?
They do. It goes back at least 40 years. The Emperor came to Britain in 1983 to study at Oxford, and within 2 days was invited to Buckingham Palace to have tea with the then Queen, and he talked very fondly about his memories of her pouring tea for him, talking about what he was going to do with his life. And then the following year, while he was still at Oxford, he got invited up to Balmoral, and he talked about how the then Prince Charles taught him fly fishing, though they didn't catch anything. He was smiling when he said that. He held a news conference ahead of coming to the UK, which I think is interesting because we don't see that with our royal family. So he was answering questions from Japanese and I think a few foreign Tokyo-based correspondents. He speaks very nostalgically about the hospitality he was given by the royal family, and of course they met up many times since. I think when he was enthroned as emperor in 2019, I believe, after his father had abdicated, Charles went along to that, and so they've seen each other on numerous occasions. But again, that's quite an interesting thing. We saw on Sunday that the Grand Duke of Luxembourg is preparing the way to hand over power to hand over the throne to his son. Not quite abdicated yet, but he's preparing the way for that. And the Japanese hadn't had an abdication since 1817, but 2019, the emperor, who was then, I think, 85, if I remember rightly, decided he was too old and infirm to carry on work. He's still alive now. Will we perhaps see the same thing happen in the UK at some point in the future? Not suggesting now. King's 75. He's been training the whole life for this job, and he, until he was waylaid by his cancer treatment, was going at it with great gusto. And I think he'll want to have a good go at putting his stamp on his reign. But who knows in the future? Perhaps the UK will change its mind about abdication as well, because abdication has really been anathema to the Windsors since the 1936 crisis.
Richard, I wonder, in your article you talk about his time at Oxford as the grandson of the Japanese emperor. I wonder what that would have been like. Would everyone on campus have known, everyone at the college he was at? I see there's a lovely picture in your article of him standing there with a bicycle, just a normal student.
Yes, I mean, I think they obviously all knew who he was, and indeed his wife was a student at Oxford a few years later as well, and she was already dating him at that point. But he seems to have got really heavily involved in student life. You know, he did a bit of rowing, played tennis, I think. Both of them talk very fondly about walking across Christchurch Meadow. It's one of the things they're looking forward to doing. They're going back to Oxford on Friday to their former colleges to have a look around. They're both extremely keen on the Cotswolds. They talk about their love of the Cotswolds, which was engendered when they were both living here. And I gather that the Cotswolds is a favourite wedding location and just a holiday destination for Japanese, and perhaps they partly popularised that.
Well, thank you very much for talking through what is such a fascinating visit with so many parallels. Richard Palmer, really appreciate it, your time and your expertise.
Well, coming up, we're going to be outside the Australian High Commission because Julian Assange has left the United Kingdom. That's after your headlines with Sophia.
Emily, thank you. It's 2:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your headlines. The Gambling Commission has passed information to the Metropolitan Police alleging that 5 more officers placed bets related to the timing of the general election. It comes after the Conservative Party withdrew its support for 2 candidates accused of placing bets on when the election would take place. Craig Williams and Laura Saunders are the subjects of inquiries by the Gambling Commission. Both will still appear on election ballots because the deadlines for those nominations has now passed. Julian Assange has touched down in Thailand as his journey back to Australia continues. The 52-year-old founder of WikiLeaks left the UK this morning and is due to appear before a federal judge in the Mariana Islands, a US territory in the Western Pacific. He's expected to be sentenced to 5 years, roughly the equivalent of the time he's already served in Britain before returning to Australia. The King and Queen are hosting a ceremonial welcome for the Emperor and Empress of Japan. They began their 3-day state visit at an event in Horse Guards Parade this afternoon, with the royal couple greeting a line of dignitaries, including Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Princess Anne isn't taking part in today's welcome while she's recovering in hospital after being injured by a horse. The Labour Party is outlining a plan to tackle knife crime. It will include creating a new cross-government coalition to work on solutions, as well as community hubs involving youth workers and careers advisors. The Conservatives criticised the plan, accusing Labour of failing to tackle knife crime in London. And a yellow health alert is in force for most of the country, with temperatures set to exceed 30 degrees today. Yesterday's high topped 28 degrees in Surrey, making it the hottest day of the year so far. But forecasters are warning it won't last long, with showers and possibly thunderstorms predicted later tomorrow. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A hot one today for some, but not all. It is much cloudier across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland from this old weather front that is also introducing slightly cooler air to the far northwest. But ahead of it, across the bulk of England and Wales, it is a very warm day, hotter than yesterday for South Wales and South West England because it is a bit sunnier, but a cloudier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, brightening up in the west, but that weather front is also providing some outbreaks of rain across eastern Scotland, and we might just see 1 or 2 afternoon heavy showers over the hills of northern England and southern Scotland. Temperatures in the north close to average, but in the south well above. We could easily top out at 30 Celsius close to London this afternoon. As we go into the evening, we'll still have some of that cloud and rain across the far northeast, so a dull and damp end to the day across the east coast of Scotland, but something a bit brighter further west, but it is quite a bit fresher here as well. The cloud breaking up a little more across Northern Ireland, so some brighter spells likely. I say there's small chance of a shower or 2 over Northern England and southern Scotland, but plenty of fine, dry and very warm weather here, but the heat is really across the south, a balmy summer's evening here. As we go through the night, not a great deal of change. I think the rain will peter out across the eastern parts of Scotland. Could turn quite misty this evening, and the threat of this low cloud just sticking to that east coast as we go into tomorrow as well. Still 1 or 2 scattered showers over northern England and southern Scotland, but most places dry. Quite a contrast in temperatures. A comfortable night in the northwest with temperatures down to single figures. Much of England and Wales staying in the mid-teens, so quite a warm and humid night, and another hot day for many tomorrow. Could be quite cloudy across the eastern counties of England early doors. Some uncertainty about whether that will clear away, but many places again fine and sunny. Still quite cloudy in eastern Scotland, but a brighter day for Northern Ireland, and again very warm in that sunshine over parts of eastern England. Goodbye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules. Buckley, West Sussex, the southbound M23 struggling. There's a broken down car towing a caravan just around Crawley Junction 10, so a lane blocked, looking a tad slow. Ringwood in Hampshire, the eastbound side of the A31. Now it's still closed off from Salisbury Road, that's the A338 junction towards Polner and queuing. There's a lorry fire there, so quite busy both ways, of course, queuing on that eastbound side. The Guildford Road in Ottershaw in Surrey, that's the A320, that's blocked both ways between Miller and Carter, and the turn off towards the hospital in Chertsey. Queuing there, there's been a multi-vehicle collision. And in Barbrook in Devon, the Watersmeet Road, the A39 is shut both ways between the Gulf Petrol Station and Shambleway in Hillsford. And queuing, that's all due to a coach on fire. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 37 minutes past 2. Now, Julian Assange will seek a pardon from the US presidency after accepting an espionage charge for his freedom.
Yes, the WikiLeaks founder reached a plea deal with the United States and has since been released from UK prison.
Well, the International Federation of Journalists has called the development a significant victory for media freedom.
Well, let's cross live to GB News reporter Ray Addison, who is outside the Australian High Commission. Ray, bring us any updates on this story. What exactly has happened and what are the implications?
Stand by.
Hi, Ray, are you there?
Oh, hello there. Hello. Apologies
Ray,
for
tell
that.
us what's
We've got a bus
happened.
right next to us. We're causing a little bit of interference.
Oh, no worries at all. Tell us what's happened.
Yes, well, absolutely. Well, we know that Julian Assange will seek a pardon from President Biden. That's what we're hearing from the family after he agreed with the United States Department of Justice to plead guilty to one charge under the Espionage Act in exchange for his freedom. Now, the plea deal was signed last Wednesday, and then a bail hearing was held last Thursday here at the High Court, which is just about 50 metres away from the Australian Commission here, and that was held in secrecy at the request of Mr. Assange. Now, he was freed from Belmarsh High Security Prison after 5 years there yesterday afternoon and taken to Stansted Airport, where he boarded a specially chartered plane. Now, the Australian government has paid around £395,000 to charter that plane. However, the Assange family is going to have to pay that money back. He departed the United Kingdom Kingdom, accompanied by Australia's High Commissioner, and he travelled to Bangkok in Thailand to refuel. He's going to continue from there onto the Northern Mariana Islands. That's the US Commonwealth in the Western Pacific. So tomorrow morning their time, but midnight UK time, Assange will appear in front of a federal court judge to plead guilty to conspiring to unlawfully obtain and disseminate classified national defence information. And he's then going to be sentenced, we understand, as per this agreement, to time served and allowed then to return to his home country of Australia. At that point, the United States is going to withdraw its extradition request. And of course, all of this follows 13, 14 years of efforts by the United States to put Assange on trial for releasing hundreds of thousands of top-secret classified US military documents involving the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, putting, they say, the lives of US sources and agents at risk. And of course, if he had gone to the US to face trial there, he could have faced a maximum sentence of around 175 years in prison. So what has changed, I think we are all asking? Well, in May, we know that Assange won a bid at the High Court to bring an appeal against his extradition to the United States. He had argued that he would be unable to receive a fair trial, predominantly because he would not, or it wasn't guaranteed at the time, that he would be able to rely upon the First Amendment right to freedom of speech. Now, that was hailed as a major moment by his supporters. And of course, since then, there's been a lot of diplomatic pressure applied by Australia, which has intensified since then. Not everybody is happy with this decision. There's been a mixed reaction from Republicans and Americans. We know former VP Mike Pence has criticised the deal, calling it a miscarriage of justice. But Stella Assange, Julian Assange's wife, has said the priority is now to get Julian home and get him fit and healthy.
Well, thank you very much, Ray, for bringing us that live from outside the Australian High Commission.
Now, parents of missing British teenager Jay Slater say they've been left in the dark by police, who's visiting Tenerife, of course, to attend a music festival. Hasn't been seen for over a week now.
Well, his family have now shared a blurry picture, or indeed shared a blurry picture of CCTV footage that could show the 19-year-old 10 hours after he was first reported as missing.
Very blurry indeed. Joining us now is journalist Gerard Cousins. And Gerard, we have some new information, do we, coming in that dog reinforcements are being brought in?
Correct. The police in Tenerife announced today, a couple of hours ago, that specialist dog handlers from Madrid have been drafted in to reinforce the dog handlers from Tenerife that were already working on the ground. And what they say specifically about those dogs is that they are trained to search in large swathes of land. That the ones in Tenerife that were already working were trained to deal with smaller areas. So I think what this shows is obviously that the search is far from being scaled down, is being ramped up. And it gives you the impression that the authorities, although they're saying that they're keeping an open mind, are focusing still on the idea that Jay has become disorientated and is out there somewhere in the mountains in this very rough and inhospitable terrain.
Goodness me, although if he's become disorientated, I mean, it's been more than a week, Gerard. There's no easy way to say this, but is it particularly likely that they'll find him alive?
Well, the police on the record are saying that they're still hopeful of finding him alive, but obviously as every day goes past, it becomes less and less likely. I think it's his mum or his father has already talked about, their fears that they're going to bring him home in a body bag. But yes, if he's out there, the chances of him being alive are remote. But the police are not going to give up. They're saying they're 100% focused on this search, and they will continue searching. No one's talking about an end date, even 9 days after the start of this search.
And what do we know about Jay Slater and his family? His family are becoming more vocal in the media, talking about the police investigation. There's been some disappointment vocalised too with how the police are carrying it out. Is that fair? I mean, you seem to suggest that things are very much ramping up rather than slowing down.
Well, what you've got to understand is that there's two aspects of this police operation. There's the very visible search involving the helicopters, the dogs, the mountain rescue experts. And the family have said on the record that they're happy with the information they're getting from the police in respect of that search. Now, there's a parallel operation which is being conducted by what would be the equivalent of CID in the old CID in the UK, police investigators, who are doing work behind the scenes. And that information will not be shared in theory with the family, with the media, with anyone outside of the very small handful of people who need to be in the know. And I understand the family have been critical of that side of the police operation, but it's a cultural thing. You know, the police out here, the Civil Guard especially, which is one of the two national police forces, do not share information. They do not put, as a general rule, family liaison officers in place to keep friends and family informed of every move and every step they're making. So I can understand the family's concern, and it must be very difficult for them in the situation they're in to have the feeling that they're not getting as much information as possible. But it just will not happen with the way Spanish police work. Certainly not in terms of that parallel investigation.
Yeah, huge cultural difference. Well, Gerard Cousins, thank you so much for joining us. A journalist out in Marbella. Really appreciate your expertise.
Yes, indeed. Now, coming up, England face Slovenia tonight in the Euros. We're heading to Cologne after this short break.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Giovanni is axed following growing allegations of threatening and abusive behaviour.
We won't see his little toes dancing around the dance floor again, which is a shame.
Was it the BBC saying, you know, we've had some bad publicity about this star, do we need to maybe let him go? Or was it Giovanni himself saying that, you know, he's had to, with all the bad publicity and what's the allegations against him, he's walked away? We don't exactly know. But what we do know is that Amanda Abingdon, who he was coupled with last year on the last series of Strictly, left claiming that she had nasty behaviour from him in rehearsals when they were training for their routines. And she's also been diagnosed with PTSD, which she is blaming or claiming happened because of the training that she was put under Giovanni. It's very sad because I've met Giovanni on quite a few occasions, and he comes across as a very nice gentleman, actually, and the fans absolutely love him. And even though the allegations are out there against him, everybody I speak to in terms of the fans are on his side.
I mean, from the fans' point of view, they don't see what goes on behind the scenes. All they see is an incredibly gifted dancer who we're seeing footage of now.
It might come out later, but there's all sorts of things coming out because after Amanda came out and claimed all this behaviour against him, a male celebrity last week also came out and voiced their opinion. Yeah, a lot of fans will be gutted, but as you say, we don't know the full story yet as what's gone on.
And it's incredible pressure that no one's allowed to be, a duffer right from the start now.
I mean, it's one thing learning lines if you're an actor, but it's a different kettle of fish altogether if you're learning moves that you've never done before. So you've got...
The People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:49, and the Three Lions, they won't be cutting their German summer holiday short. With one game to spare, they've qualified for the Euros knockout stages.
But after a disappointing 1-1 draw to Denmark, England fans in Birmingham want to see an improvement against Slovenia.
I think from watching their game, the last two games, they're not really playing as a team. I think they're playing individually.
I think there's a lot of media bashing going on about how badly we're playing. We've got the points we needed at the beginning. Slow and steady. I know it's not exciting. It's not everybody's cup of tea the way we play. I think as individuals they could be playing better, but I think we'll win tonight, despite being through anyway.
I think England are going to come good. I know they haven't been playing well, and you've got Harry Kane having a go at Lineker or Lineker having a go at Harry, but I think the boys are going to prove everybody wrong.
We need a bit more convincing. We need to really say, well, OK, we're going to go out there, we're really going to get these. We want to win these. That team is all the ones to win. They're playing for the money, whichever they might be playing for. Let's get out there and do what you can do to even get through the semis or even the final and have a bit of quality in your hearts.
Quality in your hearts, bit more oomph, bit more presence. Well, maybe those weren't the most hopeful fans, but perhaps this will put their pre-game nerves at ease.
Yes, taking a break from his lunch, FC Cologne's psychic goat mascot predicts England will beat Slovenia in their last group stage game.
Wow.
Well, I mean, the psychic goat must know what he's talking about,
if
surely.
you can't trust a psychic goat, who can you trust?
Who can you in this world, eh? You've heard it here first. Henna's the goat says it's coming home.
Well, calling in from Cologne is sports journalist Ben Jacobs. And Ben, this goat, does he have a better track record than Paul the Octopus?
I think so far so good as far as the GOAT is concerned. We wait and see tonight. He's put his reputation on the line, promising an England win, and that's exactly what they need. Because remember, through, yes, but they've got to win the group. And if they don't, then it's Germany in the round of 16, which is not ideal. And I think if that GOAT right now was to make a prediction between Germany and England, it would be in favour of the host. So it's a big night for England. They can't take their foot off the gas just because they are mathematically through to the last 16.
I mean, let's be frank, Ben. We should be wiping the floor with Slovenia.
Well, to an extent, but it's been a tight tournament, and Slovenia have got one of the real stars in Benjamin Sesko, who just before the tournament extended at Leipzig when there was interest from Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United and even PSG. So England haven't been great in terms of killing off games. If they score early, they have to show that they can do that because ultimately their opponents do have goals in them. But you're absolutely right in what you say. On paper, England are the heavy favourites, and now we wait and see whether we can see a different kind of mentality, because England were nervy in the first game, but they got the job done. They were hesitant against Denmark and they got punished. Now they need to show they can keep a clean sheet and they can score more than one goal, because that's the kind of momentum that they need heading into the knockout stage.
So what are the absolute numbers here? How well do we have to do this evening to try and avoid playing Germany next time round?
Well, ultimately win and they win the group. It's as simple as that. But then lose and there is a scenario where they finish in second place. So from England's perspective, they're heavy favourites to finish in first place. But if they were to fall to defeat, then technically, actually, mathematically speaking, they could even end up third. And that would be a very tough opponent in likely Portugal. So England won't be thinking about that or the maths. They'll just be making sure that they get the job done. And to do that, it's going to require some changes from Gareth Southgate. We understand that Trent Alexander-Arnold won't be starting in midfield. That experiment hasn't worked so far. Conor Gallagher, the Chelsea midfielder, is expected to come in. Kieran Trippier trained but has had a calf problem. Luke Shaw is back with the squad as well. So we wait and see who is at left back there. But that's been a little bit of a problem so far. And then Phil Foden still likely to start, even though we haven't seen him shine in the same way that he has done for Manchester City so far this season. So it's a test for Gareth Southgate, not only to win the game, but who's he going to stick with and what is he prepared to change to try and get the best out of this England squad?
A huge test. It'll be fascinating to watch. But for now, Ben Jacobs, sport journalist, thank you very much for joining us live from Cologne.
Yes, keeping everything crossed. We should win it. We should win it. I don't want to go up against Germany this soon, do we?
No. Although I'm in the privileged position of presenting a show on GB News at 8 o'clock, so I'll have to watch on an hour delay. So no one tell me what's happening. And I'll see
you have a choice. You have a choice. Yeah. England versus Tom.
But we're back at 12 o'clock tomorrow. Up next, it's Mark Dolan London, in for Martin Daubney. Don't go anywhere.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A hot one today for some, but not all. It is much cloudier across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland from this old weather front that is also introducing slightly cooler air to the far northwest. But ahead of it, across the bulk of England and Wales, it is a very warm day, hotter than yesterday for South Wales and South West England because it is a bit sunnier, but a cloudier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, brightening up in the west, but that weather front is also providing some outbreaks of rain across eastern Scotland, and we might just see 1 or 2 afternoon heavy showers over the hills of northern England and southern Scotland. Temperatures in the north close to average, but in the south well above. We could easily top out at 30 Celsius close to London this afternoon. As we go into the evening, we'll still have some of that cloud and rain across the far northeast, so a dull and damp end to the day across the east coast of Scotland, but something a bit brighter further west, but it is quite a bit fresher here as well. The cloud breaking up a little more across Northern Ireland, so some brighter spells likely. I say there's small chance of a shower or two over northern England and southern Scotland, but plenty of fine, dry